OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7:30 this Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Gilroy and Eoin Sheahan with you this morning all the way through until 10. Eoin, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, Ger. How are things?
Celebrating Ireland's win yesterday?
Oh, all night. This was a great moment. I just stepped on into that parallel universe yesterday and cheered on those boys in green.
And what happened?
I guess Ireland became aware of how average Robert Lewandowski is at a major tournament. This is the Robert Lewandowski who gets removed of his superpowers when he steps into the arena that is a major international tournament. This is the Robert Lewandowski who's got the same amount of European Championships goals as Nicholas Bentner, the same amount of Euros goals as Robbie Brady. Ireland realised that Robert Lewandowski loses his powers, and they just defended normally and allowed Poland to shoot themselves in the foot.
That's all for everybody who's wondering what the hell's going on. What the hell's going on?
Yesterday was this was the sort of we can do this day of the tournament, which happens at every tournament that Ireland aren't part of. Now, in fairness, it usually happens at a World Cup when we're watching Angola or someone and we're like, we should be there.
Yeah.
We're as good as this group. But yesterday was obviously particularly poignant because Slovakia were playing. Slovakia, the team that beat Ireland last year, despite the fact that Ireland managed to take more corners than Slovakia.
I mean,
they attempt more shots than Slovakia.
They won on penalties. They didn't beat us over 120 minutes on the night and 90 minutes before that.
And they subsequently went on to of course, win a second game, which Ireland, of course, would definitely have won had they beaten Slovakia that night. They definitely would have won the final. So this was Slovakia representing Ireland last night or yesterday evening, I should say.
Kevin McGoldrick scoring the winner for us, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps he would have hung around for a tournament like this. Like there was a sort of we can do this moment about the early game as well, Czech Republic versus Scotland. There was something very we can do this about watching Czech Republic in a major tournament, and it's interesting when you go through all the pre-tournament predictions about surprise packages or teams to watch. The Czech Republic very rarely get picked because they're a desperately boring country to pick, and the reason why Turkey got picked by so many people as dark horses for this competition is because Turkey were this new and shiny thing that people got a little bit carried away with. Now, I'm not saying that Czech Republic are a boring team whatsoever, but they're just at every single Euros and people are like, oh, God, let me come up with something different here than actually saying that Czech Republic are going to do well. And maybe it is this sort of normalcy of seeing them in a tournament that we're like, yeah, we could probably put it up to Scotland just like Czech Republic are doing. But then you look at the performance of somebody like Patrick Schick and you're like, that is the difference between an average team and a good team at a tournament. And even though Scotland were quite good yesterday and perhaps on the balance of things deserved more than what they got out of it, if there is one difference between those sort of teams, it is the men leading the lines of those couple of teams.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would have said that obviously about Lewandowski as well. What was it that the good people of the Czech Republic, the magic realism of Milan Kundera, the politics of Václav Havel and the flowing locks of Milan Baros did to you that so affronted you to make you think that the Czech Republic be so boring?
No, nothing. I didn't think that they were going to be boring. I just think that if you're coming up with a pre-tournament selection and you've got all these fascinating countries to choose from. You've got Turkey. Turkey are back. Their massive population are finally going to dominate the continent. Why would you pick the Czech Republic?
Going to Prague was the hipsters thing in the 90s.
It used to be.
As it opened up. Not anymore?
Long time ago. I will say this, Euro 2004, Czech Republic were everybody's team, weren't they? They were a ridiculously exciting team to watch. I just think that they've been so consistent in kind of their existence in our tournament watching, even though they haven't qualified for every tournament, and it's just kind of been like, yeah, let's pick something more glamorous than them. But as it turned out yesterday, it kind of proved that Czech Republic maybe are the team that could go above and beyond what people expect from them. And you look at the Croatia performance against England on Sunday and you're like, this team has a real chance of doing something outside of this group.
I know that Sweden are very far ahead of us at the moment because when the big games that we've played against them, they've managed to beat us. And yet there's a feeling that we can do this about us watching Sweden draw with Spain. That's the other aspect.
That's probably the more apt we can do this. Sweden, obviously, we should have beaten them at Euro 2016. When you go back to the last real meaningful fixture, I mean, last night was just extraordinary, really, when you look at the relative statistics that pop up from that performance. Like, if you just go through them here, like 85% possession in any championships game is ridiculous. 917 passes, the highest figure in a European Championships match, with Ireland against Spain now in second place. Like, I mean, the data only goes far back as 1980, but I'm pretty sure that it will be the most of all time, 917 passes by Spain last night. But they didn't get passed off the park. There was an acceptance from Sweden to allow them to do it in front of them. And even when Alexander Isak gets taken off late in the game, it just kind of underlines what Sweden were going for last night. It was unapologetically robust in order to come away with a point, because a point can be so important in a group like that.
Yeah, and like at the same time, I don't think Spain are going to be that disappointed, are they? In that they look like they're nearly there. Okay, let's talk about Morata, but also let's talk about the rest of the team. Let's talk about Morata first. What was your takeaway from Morata's performance?
I think there's every chance he gets dropped for the next game. Like, it's tough when he's there, and I mean, he does so much of the running off the ball, and there is this idea that putting the ball in the back of the net can be the easiest part for a striker, and it's all about the rest of your game that needs to be in place first before you can start getting those tap-ins. And what Morata's doing in terms of his movement has always been really good. So he would say that it's absolute nonsense that tapping the ball into the back of the net is the hardest or the easiest part. Like, if Lewandowski shows up to a tournament and seems to lose his superpowers, Morata seems to lose his powers whenever he gets a ball in a goal-scoring position. Like, just his touch deserts him, his conviction deserts him. And you've got a player in Gerard Moreno who scored 30 goals in the last domestic campaign, who is probably going to start the next game, I suspect. Like Luis Enrique said, Alvaro had a great game. We'll want to take all our chances, but other players had chances too. Aymeric Laporte said, we know what he can do. It didn't go in for him today, but the next game he can score 3 and shut everyone's mouth. I don't think he's going to score 3 the next day, Aymeric. I'd like to be brutally honest. I think that when you've got a player who has been prolific in the last season, he probably starts next day, and it is next man up. But at the same time, you look at someone like Pedri, and you look at the domination, like 17 shots. I think they're their highest tally in a major tournament game since that game against Switzerland that they lost at the 2010 World Cup. That was an off the stat last night. So there all these different lines point to the fact that Spain are going to be okay, but this key component is still missing.
Someone to score the goals for them.
Yeah. And like it's such a strange thing. Like, would it just be as simple as that if does Moreno start the next day and convert those opportunities? Like, the Polish example is quite interesting in that Lewandowski should be the example of this argument that if you have a number 9, you can do anything in this tournament, because so many teams are supposedly missing one. And maybe that argument is backed up by Romelu Lukaku and how good he looked a couple of days ago. But maybe he just is on this incredible wave of confidence, which is so important, and it's this crazy thing that we can rarely actually nail down, that Morata just seems to be missing at very important moments in his career.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we took for granted that Belgian performance, given that Hazard's missing, De Bruyne is missing. Maybe we underrated that. I don't know, maybe, look, it's very hard to draw conclusions so far from the first round. The good teams are good. We have some very good teams still to play. Tonight, for example, very important matches start to kick off, and the last of the heavyweights kick into gear. I'm not drawing too many conclusions just yet, but I've been enjoying the football. I thought the quality was decent. I see some people are giving out about the quality, but like, not a bad tournament so far, right?
Like, I totally agree with that. Like, and again, this is like your preconditioned mind looking at Czech Republic against Scotland yesterday, and after about 20 minutes, I don't know, I started to get the feel that this was going to become a mediocre game, and I was like, I don't know what's telling me that, because what I'm seeing in front of me is actually a Scotland team who very clearly want to attack down the left-hand side of the right-hand side of the Czech Republic defence. They've got a very clear attacking identity, and there is an openness to this game that is going to lead to a little bit of mad things, and as it turned out, that's exactly what happened. And I don't know, I think that there has been maybe a lack of quality at times, but I'm not sure there's been a lack of excitement. Like, I think all 3 of those games yesterday had drama at different moments, and there is something fascinating, I think, about Sweden as I say, unapologetically just sitting back and being like, we'll get our one chance and hope we convert it. And they did get their one chance. They got two good chances and they missed both of them. The Berg chance in particular in the second half after this amazing piece of skill from Isak was a ridiculous miss, and I know he's been getting a bit of a hard time after missing that back home. But like these are all things that play into the theatre of a competition like this, how a team who accept that they're not as gifted as another team actually set up to try and beat them. And
Scotland are the new Kenny Cunningham in that they're destined forever to be in the highlight reels, just not on the team doing the highlights.
Yeah, and like that goes for their entire Euros history at this point, really. I mean, when it comes to a couple of the things at Euro 96 to say the least as well. So, yeah, what a goal. What can you say about it? I know that the lads are probably talking about it last night. I see the XG philosophy had it down as a 0.01 expected goal. I would have had it a little bit higher than that. Like, it was a very tough execution, but I mean, you have to have a pop from there, and the keeper is well off his line. I would have thought that maybe 0.1 I would have had it like 10 times easier than that. I think that there's going to be a Steph Curry style change in football at some point in the next couple of years, where we go back to shooting from distance, where we go back to, like, when you consider the technical proficiency of so many of the footballers is streets ahead of where it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, because they've been coached for so long on how to kick the ball, that actually, if players were to shoot more often from outside, that we're good shooters, that we're going to see more goals. That's my. You can put it in amber now, and we can come back to it in 10 years' time. And I'm telling you that some team is going to come along. The new Marcelo Bielsa will not be a pass machine. It's going to be somebody who's like, we're going to shoot on sight from 35 yards if the right person gets into possession. It's like maybe Gaelic football style shooting. That's my prediction about what's coming next. That's what football can take from Gaelic. I can't see that development happening at all.
I mean, you couldn't have seen Steph Curry going, could you?
Well, you can't. Like, I mean, there's goalkeepers in football. Like, the Steph Curry thing was like, at least that was all in their control.
Yeah, but the goalkeeper can't cover the whole goals. Like, that's the whole point.
35 yards out, you'd have a much better chance of.
Well, the Scottish goalkeeper couldn't do it yesterday, could he?
Like, in fairness, he was part of like a Scottish gegenpress, clearly from their corner at that.
All the more reason that my thing's going to come true.
Oh well, if keepers start going that way, like, I mean, we saw it in the GAA on Saturday night as well with Gavin White's goal. Like, I mean, if keepers are going to leave their goal, of course there will be more long range goal scoring. But I find one particular fix to that particular problem, and that is to tell goalkeepers to stay in their box when your team is in the opposition half. So I don't know, maybe it will, maybe you're right. I think that
you just don't have the vision on. That's okay.
Goalkeepers
I
are also
understand.
good.
It's fine. There's always prophet in his own land is never recognised. That's it.
That is a very good point. And maybe one day I'll be eating humble pie.
43 minutes past 7 this morning, and I've made my first self-comparison with Jesus Christ. So that's how my day's going. How's your day going out there? 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream for us if you want to get in touch. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock on the show. We've got Daniel Harris standing by. Going to get to him in a couple of minutes. Talking about Portugal, talking about England, talking about whatever it is that you want us to talk about this morning as well. Robbie Henshaw is part of the Lions setup. We're starting to see some footage emerge from Jersey. There's photographs of them all in cryotherapy chambers this morning. We'll talk to him about what his expectations are as they head to South Africa for the 3-test series. We're talking some of the rugby fallout from yesterday as well. Simon Zebo back in the international picture, but not part of the squad. Obviously, he has a big game coming up this weekend against La Rochelle. Sports news at 8:35 with Will. We'll talk about the news breaking overnight. It looks like Vinnie Perth is going to be the new and the old Dundalk manager. Power rankings at 8:45. Finally, the day has come where we are shutting up the entire county of Meath. They're not going to be allowed to speak. They will be muted. There is no opportunity for them to have their speak anymore because they have been ritually humiliated by the beasts of Kildare. That's at 8:45. Julien at 9:10. Going to talk to us about France, the French football camp, which was perfectly harmonious, have decided to introduce the free radical of carrying Benzema into things, and it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens because Benzema likes Mbappe, Mbappe likes Benzema, and that's it. What are you laughing at?
I'm just so unbelievably excited for France tonight. Like, when you pitch it like that, it's like the tournament starts tonight, everyone. You can draw your conclusions you want. The tournament starts tonight.
You were making the point outside that there's an opportunity for Didier Deschamps to become the first captain, manager, winner of World Cup and Euros, winner of World Cup and Euros in this tournament. And instead of just like letting things nicely coast along with the team who's just delivered the World Cup, he's decided to risk it all on the humble shoulders of Karim Benzema.
Like, what way to do it? What better way to do it? Maybe Deschamps was just a little bit bored and he's decided this was the most exciting way to do it.
And what a great character Karim Benzema is, to risk everything. Like, to have it in your corner. Like, just make sure there's no video cameras around.
Well, yeah, well, that's the key point in all of this. Benzema, I mean, he's declared himself 100% fit. I do want to see, I would love to have seen Giroud and Mbappe start tonight, but...
Do you think there's a possibility of a fist fight between Benzema and Mbappe, sorry, Benzema and Giroud before this tournament is over? On the pitch. Now, not in training, on the pitch in a match. What are the odds?
Like, I think Benzema, and like we were kind of touching on this yesterday, Benzema is just clearly offended by the very existence of Olivier Giroud. Like, this handsome man has rocked up and is about to become the all-time top scorer for France. Yeah. He's about to overtake Thierry Henry, Olivier Giroud. And
sorry, that's the one thing. That Karim Benzema has all of the world's gifts except the one thing that Giroud has. And Giroud has the one thing that Benzema probably wants. This is a subtext to the whole thing that I hadn't even considered on.
There was a lot of male insecurity when it comes to the Benzema, Olivier Giroud beef.
Can we get a proper beef Israel? Will you do it? Can we get a mini documentary? I sense something coming here.
We'll do a rewind.
For the final group stage, maybe?
Yeah, 100%. But I still think there's a little bit more to be applied to this beef. Like, I hopefully, like, Mbappe is man of the match tonight and then has to do media, or even better, Benzema has to go out and say something. It just feels that people are still holding back a little bit something on this story. One defeat is all it takes for this thing to implode. 7:47
this morning. Daniel Harris, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, thanks. How everyone?
Yeah, how's your tournament been so far?
It's been a bit of a slow start, hasn't it? I think that the problem that we've got is it 36 matches to eliminate 8 teams means that there's not the same level of jeopardy that you would usually want. So just before, you were talking about how the tournament starts tonight with France and Germany, and like you guys, I can't wait for that game, but it doesn't really matter that much who wins.
Does it not matter a little bit because of where you finish in the group? I mean, I know nobody thinks about this early in the tournament, but actually, if you are smart, you want to win this group and try and avoid England.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it does matter to win the group, but you can also come third in the group. And you look at it the other way around. For England, they probably want to come second in their group, and coming second in the group at the World Cup was one of the reasons they got to the semi-finals in the end. So I think that it is difficult to decide exactly what's going to happen at this point. But what I mean is that France and Germany will play a game. One team will win, one team will lose, or it will be a draw. But the reality is that we're going to probably see both of them and Portugal in the next round, whatever happens. And at that point, you've got to win 3 games to get to the final. And obviously, you'd prefer to have an easier one. But if you have a difficult one, you'd expect that. And the tournament, the knockouts should be brilliant. But the group stages feels like it's more about just enjoying the fact that there is football to be played 3 times a day than the football that we're actually going to watch is spectacular.
The only thing I'd say is that I think the football has been pretty good so far. Like, I understand the point you're making about there being less jeopardy. And yet, in a weird way, because so few teams are going out, imagine being one of those teams who goes out. Like, how crap would you feel to be one of the few teams that has to go home at the end of, like, you know, we've been there at international tournaments, we know what that's like. So
not in this format, even Ireland's like
Yeah, the last time they did this format, I think, was Mexico '86, where Scotland managed to go out at that point. They're in a group with, I think, Germany, Denmark, and Uruguay, which was the group of death at that point. So I mean, it was a bit of a difficult one. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I understand totally that you don't want to go out. And what you see is the game that you saw last night, for example, which was probably one of the games I've enjoyed the most so far. Sweden against Spain, because Sweden basically, I think, well, if they get a draw out of that, then they feel that they're almost there, because they will get the points they need off the other teams that are in the group. But that was actually an enjoyable game, because that was kind of like, you feel like what a tournament game sometimes will look like, where you've got an obvious favourite who aren't quite able to find a way against a really well-organised team who are also quite good. And that was why I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget about the joy of the group stages, because obviously not that much ends up getting written about the group stages, not that much except in Ireland, in terms of nostalgia happens about group stages, whereas actually, you know, loads of stuff happens and we just blah, blah, blah it away because of the drama that's coming in the quarterfinals and the penalty shootout.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you always remember when you watch these tournaments is the best team in the group stages is very rarely the team that wins it at the end.
Let's talk a little bit about Portugal, because you've been writing about Bruno for The Guardian, and we have today, assuming he starts and doesn't pick up an injury in the warm-up, Ronaldo becoming the first player to play in 5 Euros and his longevity, all that kind of stuff, and the beginning of some murmurings about maybe the team is ready to move on from 18 months out from a World Cup. It's going to be very interesting to see if he can make it all the way to Qatar, and I presume he will. But what's your take on how the team is progressing and Bruno's role within that at the moment?
I think that the problem that Portugal have is a similar problem to England. They've just got so many good players. How on earth do you get them all in? Because they'll want some midfield control, and so they'll play a holder, probably Ruben Neves, and then they'll play Bruno. But then they've also got Bernardo, and they've got that might be their 3, or they might play a 4. And then up front, how do you pick from Ronaldo, Andre Silva, Diego Jota, and Joao Felix? I think that Ronaldo will start, but what we'll probably see through the tournament is we'll see a lot of substitutions, and we'll probably see quite a few changes as well, partly because the players are knackered, and partly because it's quite warm. And Portugal in particular, they have difficult games, so they'll be wanting to. It's not like they're not going to be able to coast through any of their games in a way that some of the other teams might, which sometimes works quite well because you have players who have got momentum and who are competing, and that tends to be the best preparation for competing. I'm not quite sure how they'll do it. I think they'll play Ronaldo to begin with, but it wouldn't be entirely surprising if he was usurped by Joao Felix at some point.
Over the course of this tournament?
I think that's possible. I mean, you always think it depends how it goes. If Ronaldo starts scoring goals, then of course he'll stay in the team. But if Portugal struggle, then the manager's going to have a decision to make, because on the one hand, no one wants to be the guy that dropped Ronaldo. Graham Taylor's always remembered for taking off Gary Lineker for Alan Smith when England got knocked out at Euro 92. And people thought that was a ridiculous decision because England needed a goal. So why did he take off their best striker, who never played for England again? That was it. But at the same time, if you're not scoring and you're a striker, then you might well get taken off, because I guess he felt that England just wanted to whack it long. So they put on Alan Smith. And Portugal don't have those kind of options. They have much more international quality options. And I don't think that Ronaldo will be exempt, because everyone knows that he's on the way down. He's nowhere near the player he was even a year ago. He's still good, but he's not undroppable. The problem with dropping Ronaldo these days is the politics. It's not, is he someone who you could legitimately replace with a different player who might do something else for you?
Bruno Fernandes has played 68 games this season for both club and country. Like, he surely comes into this tournament a little bit knackered, Daniel, to say the least. Is his role going to be different, do you suspect, than the role that we see from Manchester United?
Yeah, I think so. For Portugal, he usually plays as an 8 rather than as a 10. I don't know how much it matters to the actual running around he does, because he runs. I think there's only a handful of players that ran more than him in the Premier League last season. He does run around like a nutter, even though he plays as number 10. But yeah, he can. The reason why United, I think, play him as a number 10 is not because they don't think he can play as number 8. It's that he's so good at making goals happen that United need him to be in that position. Whereas Portugal is a little bit different, because they have Bernardo Silva as well. They have another attacking midfield player who can put in a shift. And they have Ronaldo, who's probably not going to do that much running up front, that much pressing. So they probably need Bruno to do a little bit more running up and down, a little bit more shuttling. But so I think he will play a different role. But I'm going to feel ridiculous as I say this, but he's 40-1 to be top scorer. I think the reality is that it will be Lukaku, because he'll be able to fill his boots in the group stages. I'm not sure how far Belgium are going to get. Feel like this tournament's come probably a couple of years too late for Belgium. But he is someone that does score in lots of games. So 40-1 seemed like good odds to me for Bruno to be top scorer. But he will be playing slightly deeper probably.
Can he nudge Ronaldo off penalties?
That's the problem.
Yeah, good luck with that, old boy. I did think about that when I thought about that. And yeah, you're unlikely to nudge Ronaldo off penalties, it's true. But if you can hang around for 90 minutes of every game, hard to see Ronaldo playing that much more than 70 in some of these.
Ronaldo was saying that he doesn't necessarily care too much about Ali Day's record, but surely he does, Daniel. Surely everything we know about Ronaldo would suggest that to become the greatest international goal scorer of all time is right up there on his priority list. I'm
sure the main thing that he wants is he wants to retain the Euros. And he did. Portugal basically won it because of him last time, even though he managed to get injured in the final. So I'm sure he would want that record, but I'm sure that, he would not say that he wanted that record at this point. But as you say, nothing that we know about Ronaldo suggests that this latest aspect of personal glory is something that he won't want to achieve. And I mean, that's understandable. If the desire for personal glory is what's driven him to drive his teams to win all the trophies that they've won, then you have to say that it works.
Is it a bit strange that we're entertaining this conversation about Ronaldo being dropped? Like, it is being spoken about quite a bit, and it has been a talking point. But like, given the season that he's had, like top scorer in Serie A, this is not necessarily a player who is totally on the wane. This is not a player who, if it was somebody else, you would be considering not starting, given his goal scoring record.
I think that he's just become a remorseless goal scorer, and for some teams that is enough. And the way that other teams are organised, they require something different. Good example is actually probably Ruud van Nistelrooy at United. When he became someone who just scored goals, the team deteriorated, and Fergie got rid of him quite soon after that and replaced him with Lewis Zaha, who was not as good a player, but he was more dynamic, and that was what that team needed at that point. So I think with Ronaldo that he'll start to begin with because he's in the team and he's in possession, and who will want the fuss of dropping Ronaldo? They'll hope that he gets off to a good start against Hungary, a game that Portugal are going to not assume they're going to win, but they're definitely going to assume they're going to win because of the games that are coming next, and they're better than Hungary, and hope that Ronaldo can score. And then in the coming games, the games against Germany and against Germany and France are going to be harder. So I think that what will happen is they'll start Ronaldo because they'll want the chances to drop to him. But if they require a more dynamic option, then they'll either put someone up front alongside him if they haven't played a diamond to begin with, which they might. Or they'll take him off. I think that Ronaldo won't expect to play 90 minutes of every game because he knows what the situation is. He'll know physically that he can't do as much as he could before, and he'll know the quality of the players that are behind him. And it doesn't mean that he thinks that he shouldn't play, but I think that almost every player, more or less every player in the history of game, as they get older, they start to be managed. And he is definitely at that point. The question is it's a difficult political thing because it's difficult for the team because he's the leader, and it's difficult because every move that Ronaldo makes is something that people focus on. And so if you start leaving Ronaldo out, you start taking him off and you're the coach, then people are going to start nagging you about that.
Look, I realise it's a disease to be perpetually looking forward when we're in the midst of something amazing, but the World Cup is like barreling towards us. It's the shortest gap ever between tournaments, and I presume Ronaldo is thinking about finishing in the World Cup, and I presume Portugal are thinking about winning that World Cup next year. Like, if you're the manager, do you actually not want the circus around the World Cup? Are you happy to have the circus now, rip the plaster off, and then go into next year's World Cup with the team that you want, that you think actually is going to be capable of winning in Qatar?
No, I don't think so. This Portugal team, at their best, are good enough to win this competition now. They're also defending champions. And yeah, tomorrow never comes. What you need to do is you need to take advantage of what you've got now. Like, you can build in the qualifiers, you can build in the friendlies, but I guarantee that Portugal are not thinking about what's going to be in the World Cup. Now the manager is thinking about how best can he defend this title. How can he beat Hungary today and Germany and France in the next week, because that's what he's got to do. And if he doesn't do that, he might not even get to the World Cup because his job might be in jeopardy. If Portugal go out in the group stages, he's going to be looking for another job. And what he needs to do is he needs to defend that title.
I'm sure he's being kept awake by the prospect of facing Ireland in September as well, of course.
Absolutely.
087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to get in touch with us this morning. We're talking to Daniel Harris on OTB AM. Let's talk a little bit about England. And you talked about the issue that they have being similar to the Portuguese issue of too many good players to get in the team. And still no Jack Grealish, not even available off the bench. I just can't get behind this. What the hell's going on? Like,
I think that, I mean, it makes quite good sense to me, I think, that it is Grealish or Foden. Because if you think you're going to have in midfield, Southgate's decided he wants to play 2 holders, and the defence that he has probably sort of decided it for him as well. But even if you put another midfield player in there for one of the holders, I would put Bellingham in there, because I think that Grealish is a lovely player to watch, but first of all, he's totally unproven at this level. He's never played in the Champions League. He's barely played at international level. Doesn't mean I don't think he's a good player, but to put Grealish as one of your midfield 3, I don't see how that you're going to get away with that at this level when you're going to spend time chasing the ball. If you've also, because you want Mason Mount is going to be the attacking midfield player, and I don't think that England could play Declan Rice, Grealish, and Mount. I don't see that is a viable midfield 3, particularly given England's back 4 and the fact that England want to play a back 4. So if you can't play Grealish in midfield, and let's be real, his manager at club level doesn't think that he can risk him in midfield. I mean, I'm sure there's also an aspect that he's got good midfield players anyway without Grealish, but he won't risk Grealish in midfield. He sticks Grealish on the left, where Grealish can just go about his business creating. But if England want to play Phil Foden, and as far as I can see it, England have to play Phil Foden because he's too good not to play, then on the other flank, they want some serious pace, and they want a more of a goal threat, and they want someone you can go on the outside or someone you can come inside. And then that is either Sterling or Rashford or Sancho. I don't think the balance of the team is right with Grealish. I think there's a really good chance we see plenty of Grealish if England make it to the knockouts. Let's assume they're going to make it to the knockouts. Problem for England is the team that they're going to play in the knockouts if they win the group, which it now looks like they're going to do. In those games, if England make it through the last 16 to the quarters, I think that Grealish is someone we'll see like in the last half an hour of games if England need a goal, because he can do stuff that make a goal happen when they're starting to think less about balancing the team and more about getting the ball down the other end. And I also think Grealish is a player we might see when England want to hang on to the ball, because he can hang on to the ball and he can win fouls and free kicks, and someone who can keep the ball down that other end. I think that Gareth Southgate is actually someone who might more be thinking about the World Cup, because you wonder if this is just a tournament too early, because I think that what England have the players to do, and he hasn't quite been able to bed this in yet, is when it does get to the World Cup, England should not be looking to protect their defence in quite the same way they are now. They should be looking to dominate the ball against everyone. And I don't think that they're quite settled enough to do that yet, perhaps, because Foden has only just come into the team. Bellingham hasn't really been with the squad very long, so they haven't had a chance to settle yet. If you look at France and Germany and Portugal, who just 3 teams, if you look at Italy, those teams are much more settled than England. So if you think about the team that Gareth Southgate picked at the weekend, no one would have predicted that team. Whereas the Italy team, everyone knew what that was going to be, because pretty much that's the team that they always play. Whereas for whatever reason, I do think this is partially, they should be in a better position than they are now. Like, no one else was picking players that weren't in the squad for their friendlies, for example, in the last couple of weeks. England aren't quite as settled, partly, as I said, because Bellingham and Foden have only really just broken in, but Foden's so good you've got to include him. And they're not quite as settled in having their patterns of play and their ball retention. So what they're really looking to do is more try and protect the defence and then rely on the good players to combine for something or to find a counter. And I don't think that's the way England should be playing in 2 years' time, but I do understand why it's the way they're playing now. And you say that you'd like Grealish to be in the team. Where are you putting him, and instead of who?
Well, I'm probably putting him in instead of Mason Mount, because I'm a Villa fan, and so...
Okay, I mean, yeah, Mason Mount has done it in the Champions League, and...
But Calvin Phillips hasn't done it, and was like man of the match, you know, I think...
No, and if Grealish could play in Phillips' position, then that's a conversation. But I don't think at this point that you can say that Jack Grealish is a better player than Mason Mount, because we haven't really seen the evidence. Mason Mount has done it at a high level, and also Mason Mount gives you a little bit more, gives you more speed because he's quicker and he's got more legs, and he also gives you more options because Mount can play as your attacking midfield player, but he can also play as an 8.
Honestly, I think I don't think Raheem Sterling, I think that there was a lot of praise for Sterling's performance because he scored the goal, but I didn't think he was as amazing in general play as everybody seemed to to be suggesting, and I think that I could have him. I could have Grealish in my team instead of him. I get your point about the need for speed.
And I get your point about Sterling too. Like, I wouldn't have picked Sterling. I don't know who I would have picked because I felt like of the three, Sterling, Rashford, and Sancho, because those to me are the options. Because if you've got Foden, I want a winger on the other side, and I want a goal threat on the other side. So that would be Sancho, Sterling, and Rashford. And if you'd asked me at the end of the season, I would say pick Sancho because the other two are out of form. I don't know what Gareth Southgate's seen in training because perhaps Rashford had a couple of weeks off and he now has rested the chronic injuries, so he's good to go. I don't know. I think that if you offered me a fit Rashford and a fit Sterling and a fit Sancho, I would probably go with a fit Rashford. But I haven't seen him in training, and I also don't watch Sancho play every week. So I'm probably not in the best position to decide whether he's better. But I can totally see why Southgate picked Sterling, because he was in possession. He hadn't done anything for Southgate that suggested he should be out of possession. And I think that he has created more goals for Harry Kane than anyone else. So Southgate feels there's a partnership over there. But again, I think we'll see. I'm not sure how much Sancho will see. I think we'll see plenty of Rashford. And if you're a defender, after you've spent 70 minutes in the heat chasing Sterling around, the last thing you want to see is someone like Marcus Rashford. Yeah. So I think I totally understand why he picked Sterling. I wouldn't have done, but he picked him. He scored the winning goal. Southgate won. You got it right, whichever way you look at it. Even if you think that there was a better performance in England, I think that there's a better 11 in that England squad than the one that Southgate picked. But they got the tournament started. They beat their biggest rivals in the group. And you've got to say that Southgate got it right at that point. And even if you think that you might, with all my managerial credentials, I think that I would have got it even more right than he did. Obviously, I'm talking out my arse, so here we are.
You mentioned Jadon Sancho there, and where I'm just kind of like not fully on top of this. I don't think many people are, because we're all in Euros mode. But there is this talk in the background, similar to last summer, of Jadon Sancho and Manchester United. Is this just the gossip columns getting up and running and getting a bit of early summer momentum, or is this back to last summer again, that the talk is very real?
I mean, I was told, as I said on here last summer, that deal was basically done, and then United refused to pay the amount that they'd said they were going to pay. He's obviously cheaper now and less than they would have paid last season. It does sort of look like it will happen, but you just don't know with transfer deals. You don't know with United. At some point, they'll have to say either we will or we won't pay the money. I think it's an interesting thing with Sancho is that his numbers are great. But I think the thing with United, the thing that would concern me with him going for United is they'll want him to play on the right. Does he have the pace to go on the outside? I'm not sure if he does. But what's good about Sancho for United is Sancho's basically an auxiliary playmaker. And that means that United have slightly more options with what they do with Pogba. It means that they can leave Pogba out and play two number 8s with Bruno, or 6 and an 8 with Bruno if they wanted to. Because the problem when you just have Bruno making the play is that if you shut Bruno down, you shut United down. So when they played Fred McTominay, Bruno, although Bruno very often made it happen because he's a brilliant player, and the other McTominay is also capable of playing well. Fred is capable of playing well, not good enough for United, but can be good sometimes. And they're around other good players, it often works. But if you had Sancho as well, then you could give more ballast to the midfield because your playmakers could be Sancho and Bruno. And that is very attractive to me as a United supporter. And I think the other thing on top of that makes Sancho an attractive option is that if you remember Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez, they were three strikers and they started often in nominal positions, Rooney on the right, Tevez in the middle, Ronaldo on the left, or whatever, Rooney on the left, Tevez in the middle, Ronaldo on the right, just depended. And that would be the beauty of signing Sancho, is that if you had Sancho, Rashford and Greenwood, which will be the aim, obviously they've got Cavani for another season, then you would start them in nominal positions, Sancho on the right, Greenwood in the middle, and Rashford on the left. But all three of them could turn up in any position at any time. And that level of flexibility reminds me of maybe one of United's greatest forward lines. And then you've also got behind them, you've got Ahmad, who can play in any of the positions. You've got Elanga, who can play in any of the positions also. And you're starting to see something building that looks like something that could work. But I'm sure that there's a lot of aggravation to come with people that can be asked to support transfers, because that United tend not to do things simply. If you look, Liverpool decided they wanted Koundé, they went and they bought him, they paid his release clause, and that was the end of that. Whereas United tend not to do things in that way because they're always looking to save a pound note.
Always good to have you on, Daniel. Thanks a million. Enjoy the football. Cheers. Talk to you soon.
You too, Sim. Enjoy, everyone. See you guys.
Daniel Harris giving us some thoughts there and some insight into what may well be another long-running transfer saga around Jadon Sancho. It's 10 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. We're delighted to have you with us. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course, you can always get us on the YouTube stream. You can leave a comment there and we'll get to those in just a couple of minutes' time. We've got a packed show still to come. We're going to be talking France with Julien Lorenz after 9 o'clock. There's the Gaelic football power rankings a little bit later on. We're going to be back after these ads with Robbie Henshaw.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
You know, it's like getting married, Nathan.
Careful now.
Unusually, exceptionally brilliant. You know, for a lot of people, and Mbappe has that quality.
Get a grip there, lads. Irish soccer's a joke on and off the pitch, will always be so, says one of our texters.
It's just cut off the show, John.
For the best Euro 2020 coverage, subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports betting app for a full range of markets on shots on target, assists, passes and more on every match of the Euros, all powered by Opta. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports, this is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Auto Mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Auto Mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Okay, so Robbie Henshaw was today on hand to announce the nominees for the 2021 Zurich Men's Players Player of the Year Award and the 2021 Zurich Women's Players Player of the Year Award. So celebrating the achievements of Irish rugby players both on and off the field, the Zurich Irish Rugby Players Awards will take place later in the year with nominees in further categories to be announced in the coming weeks. Delighted to say that Robbie Henshaw is with us now. Robbie, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks a million for having me.
Thanks a million for coming on. I presume this is one last round of chatting to people, keeping your head in the game here before flying out and before fully immersing yourself in the Lion Zone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a hectic kind of week, just getting our bits together and just knowing what to pack, what not to pack, and just it's going to be a full-on 8 to 9 weeks of a camp. So yeah, looking forward to ripping into it, but we certainly won't be. It'll have its challenges, as we all know. But yeah, it's overall it's hugely positive. Everyone's excited to get going.
What didn't you pack in 2017 that you immediately arrived in New Zealand and realised you should have packed?
Probably my accordion. I probably should have done that. Yeah. I got strict instructions from their bagman Rala to bring it this time. So, yeah, it's that's definitely up near the top of the list to bring. Because
it's going to be up to you guys to provide the entertainment for one another. I'd imagine you won't be going out socialising too much. Not that it was done in New Zealand at all. So this is going to be a great opportunity for some of the British players to see what other skills you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've made sure that Bundy brings his travel guitar as well that he got in Japan. I've told him to bring it. So, it'll definitely be a great chance. I suppose we won't be spending a huge heap of time outside of the hotel. So I think we'll have more time to get to know, I suppose, the wider group and the other guys, and it'll be great to meet them and know them on a deeper level.
I know Bundy Aki was talking about how taken aback he was by how good at music you were. Have you played together before? Yeah, we used to do a bit of messing around on the guitars back when I lived with one of the lads, Eoin McKeown. He used to have a guitar, and we actually taught Bundy how to play Oh Grace. Yeah, so he knows that song, and
I'd say he knows the fields of Athenry as well. So, yeah, he's fairly decent on it himself. So he definitely plays it down. Like,
right, okay. So he was a musician before coming to Ireland. Just to be clear here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we may as well talk about Bundy because, like, I think a lot of Irish rugby fans were really delighted to see him and his name pop up when the Lions squad was announced. I presume for you, that level of delight was on a whole other level.
Yeah, it was amazing. I know the work he's put in since coming here, and I suppose the seasons he's had over the last 4 years, like it's down to the hard work he's put in, and I suppose the sacrifice he's made, and he's been incredible, both for Connacht and for Ireland. So yeah, it was so well deserved, and yeah, he's buzzing himself. He can't wait to get going. He's really excited, and yeah, it's great to see. It's great to see.
The thing is, since you've moved to Leinster, you've obviously played against Bundee Aki quite a bit. What's it like to tackle Bundee Aki? What's it like to be up against him in the midfield?
Tell you a funny one, actually. I still haven't played against him.
Right, okay. My apologies.
Yeah. So I actually don't know what it's like to tackle him. But yeah, it's actually I got a hell of a slagging for it in Leinster because I still haven't played Connacht. Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah. But I was meant to play them last year, but ended up falling ill that night, and the lads were like, "Oh, very suspect." Very yeah. So it's no, I still haven't played them. Hopefully next year I'll find out what it's like to tackle him. He'll probably run over me though.
It's like Neymar when his sister's birthday comes around. So when it comes to these next few weeks, you obviously say that you've got to just get your packing all right and all that sort of thing. What is the actual logistical plan here? Is it settling into South Africa for a couple of days before the warm-ups, or how much of a bedding in period will you have?
Yeah, so we're traveling to Jersey comes on this Sunday for like a pre-tour camp, and then we play Japan up in Murrayfield with supporters, which will be so exciting to look forward to. I think that's what we all want to do. So if we get a chance to play that game with Japan, it'll be class as well. It'll be a good start to, I suppose, the campaign in front of, I think it's 16,000 supporters. So that'll be great to start. And then we fly down from Edinburgh to Joburg, and we're based there for about 3 to 4 weeks. And we're between Joburg and Cape Town, just kind of two bubbles is kind of what we've been told. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of time in these restricted in these bubbles. But from what I see, what I believe, the hub in Cape Town is beautiful. It's kind of an hour outside of the city. It's up in a kind of a resort on the coast and a big golf course. So yeah, there'll be loads to do, I'd say. So it's exciting. Like,
do you know who you're rooming with yet?
No, I think we all have individual rooms just because.
Sorry,
of COVID. Yeah, just because of COVID. And that's what we've been used to for the last year as well. So even when you would be used to having a roomie in camp, yeah, we're all on individual rooms. So yeah, that's going to be the same again.
And who were you with in 2017?
I was with a lot of guys you mix up. I was with, name out a few. I was with Jonathan Joseph. I was with Conor Murray. I was with Johnny Sexton. I was with Ian Henderson. They literally chop and change. You're moving hotel every 3 days on a normal camp. So you travel on a Sunday after a game, play a game Wednesday, travel maybe Thursday morning. So you're constantly going. But this will be a bit better in terms of we won't have to travel as much because we're just two hubs. So that's probably another positive, I'd say.
You've mentioned already that you know to pack the accordion this time. What else would have been the big takeaway from 2017 and your experience on a Lions tour?
Probably just to enjoy the whole experience. I definitely did enjoy it in 2017, but probably not to go into your shell a bit. You know, it is quite overwhelming for your first tour, you know, to be around all these players and these guys that you've, you know, played against or admired from different countries. And, you know, it's a huge occasion. It's a huge experience, and it's like no other, I suppose. And if you do get the chance to do it, to go on it, you just really embrace it. So that's probably one of the takeaways from 17. And then just, give it your all as well. that's another thing. You just have a go and enjoy it, and there'll be great memories, from it, and great times. So that's it really.
It must be a little bit challenging to try and appreciate these things in the moment when your objective is to go out and perform every single weekend, and having a good time isn't exactly high on the priority list when you're coming up against the world champions.
No, massively, and that's where you have to have the balance of work and I suppose enjoyment. And we really know that coming up against world champions is going to be unbelievably tough, especially down there. And another huge challenge is probably playing at altitude, what we're not used to. So there's 2 tests at altitude, I'm sure. So yeah, that's going to be tricky. I know from some of the schedules we're doing a bit of training next week with altitude masks and stuff. So just to get us used to that. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough tour, and we're going to have to, I suppose, have our detail covered and understand, I suppose, the mindset of the Springboks and how they approach games, both, I suppose, tactically, mentally and emotionally. So we're going to have all bases covered.
How hands-on is Warren Gatland on an individual level with you during a Lions tour?
Yeah, he is quite hands-on. He oversees everything. He's really kind of he's over everything, and I think the coaches under him, they do a lot of individual coaching with players. So I suppose that's how he operates, and he's kind of like the director of everything. So yeah, he's really good. He's a really good coach, and he really gets the best out of his playing group, which is great to be around and great to see. And yeah, looking forward to getting going and getting to know the players and the coaches.
It's interesting that when we talk about a Lions tour, you've naturally had to have quite a good season to be in the Lions squad. Mm-hmm. So what do you put down your form, especially during the Six Nations, to, Robbie? Because yourself and you were in a handful of players that people automatically had in this Lions tour as a result of those Six Nations performances.
Yeah, I've been asked this question a few times. I think mainly from my personal point of view, it's probably the run of games I've got, the bit of consistency, and not being, I suppose, hampered with niggly injuries that have just kind of stalled my season and kind of stopped me kind of when I'm getting going. So I think that I've got that run of games, that run of consistency, kind of like the more you do at something, the better you get at it. And that's kind of how I'm viewing it. And just enjoying my rugby as well. Just I suppose, not worrying about outside noise or not worrying about outcomes, and then just focusing on what I can do and be as positive as I can. So small little tweak in mindset, I suppose. And I think that comes with, I suppose, experience and, experience of the last few years of, I suppose, injuries, of games and things like that. So I think it's a combination of a bit of everything.
What's the main difference from your point of view with regards to the way you can impact a game as a 12 and as a 13?
Yeah, I suppose it depends on the style of play you want to play. I think as a 12, you need to be physically able to dominate in the centre. You need to have that, I suppose, that physicality in defence first and foremost, that you're putting in big hits. Secondly, I suppose you're helping out your 10 in attack, that you're able to be his eyes and be his ears, and obviously see space for where the space is and communicate to him effectively. And then aggressive in your carry. So if you're getting over the gain line, you always need to do it as a 12. As a 13, I think you need to be able to, defending is huge. You need to be able to control and lead the defence. And I think you're a big thing from playing 13. I think you need to be able to have the balance of being a strike runner, like as a impact and hitting the gain line hard, and the balance of distributing. So you need to have a good balance of that you're able to do both. So yeah, that'll be my view on both of them. But when you get into, I suppose, through the phases, they're quite similar in terms of you chop and change. It's just a number on the back then.
Yeah, because it does seem that there's more of an influence now on keeping the ball alive, and I presume in turn that just makes the midfield positions largely interchangeable. So I assume that comes down then to your relationship with Bundy or with Gary Ringrose, and that's the key point, as opposed to whether you've got 12 or 13 on your back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's as well, you need to have a chat before you go out to play a game, and that you have a plan between the both of you that you're going to do this well, you're going to move the ball to the wings, get the ball to space, or you're going to, I suppose, take the defence on through the middle if they're spaced wide, or if they're an aggressive defence. So yeah, you need to have a plan between, I suppose, the two centres need to know what they're going to do prior to playing the game, and that's definitely key as well, both in attack and in defence, is having that, I suppose, that relationship and that bit of communication prior to playing, that you're going to do this.
It's been really notable that you've done so well in both of those positions this year, and those I guess it's a skill almost to be able to shift seamlessly from one position to another. So do we think probably we might see you at full back at some point again down the line? I mean, that experiment seemed to have been thrown out pretty quickly at the time, if I recall.
Yeah, I'm not sure if full back, I haven't played a lot there. I could definitely do a job maybe if someone got injured in the game, but I haven't played enough, I don't think, to go and play a full game there, or to play a few games there. I don't think I've played enough there. It's completely different to when I used to play and say down in Connacht. It's a completely different position, and there's such more emphasis on backfield and covering the grass. It's way different to what I was used to. So it's I could definitely slot in if there was a crisis, but I think I wouldn't be jumping straight back into it. I think centre is probably my main position.
Naturally, that's interesting though, that the position had obviously moved on from your provincial playing days between that point and say that game against England.
Yeah, absolutely. And even since that game, I think there's a big emphasis on our backfield, about how, I suppose, how our backfield was exploited that day. And I think since that game, there's more of a plan, there's a clearer plan. Our backfield that day wasn't good enough, and I definitely say I wasn't good enough that day, but there was a combination of things that weren't right, and I think we've cleaned a lot of that up since.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Well, whether it's a 12 or a 13, anyway, it looks like a promising summer ahead. Just one last one. We were talking about Bundy Aki there a moment ago and how delighted you were for him. Yeah. Is it difficult being around Leinster camp? I know there was obviously a few other Leinster players in the squad, but is it difficult when the likes of Gary Ringrose doesn't make it and you're in the camp in and around those moments?
Yeah, well, I just sent the lads a text when I didn't find out, and I think just had a quiet word with them and just tried to give them confidence just to stay with it. And I think saw how Gary went out and played against Connacht after the squad was announced. It was class, and he's been great since. So just shows his character, and obviously, you want to see the lads in there just because of their talent and because of what they've done over the last few years. So it's really tough, and I think the coaches in the Lions setup said it obviously was the toughest squad selection they've ever had to make. So I think the lads stay positive, stay fit, and anything can happen. You see in New Zealand and South Africa before, and Australia, the amount of players that come down, that fly down if needed. So anything could happen. So that's what I said, is just stay with it, and hopefully it'll be called down.
All right, just a reminder that Robbie Henshaw was today on hand to announce the nominees for the 2021 Zurich Men's Players Player of the Year Award and the 2021 Zurich Women's Players Player of the Year Award, celebrating the achievements of Irish rugby both on and off the field. The Zurich Irish Rugby Players Award will take place later in the year, with nominees in further categories to be announced in the coming weeks. Robbie Henshaw, very best of luck with the summer ahead. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
OTB AM.
Yeah, injury permitting, it is going to be a very, very big Lions tour from Robbie Henshaw. Really looking forward to seeing him tear up trees against the South Africans. Some other rugby news that we just need to chat about briefly in the papers today. The rest of the press conference, the embargoed stuff from yesterday's team announcement suggests that Simon Zebo has a big future with Ireland. He's not going to be part of the squad for the 2 summer tests because he's obviously still involved with Racing and they've got games this weekend, and potentially after that as well if they beat La Rochelle. But it seemed that Andy Farrell was pretty effusive in his praise of Simon Zebo, his kicking game, his offloading, and the impact that he can have with Ireland.
Yeah, and this is going to be something that we're going to see over the next little while, that once he comes back into the fold at Munster, we're going to see Zebo again in the conversation for the back three. So that makes this a very important summer for someone like Robert Baloucoune, who will be getting his opportunity in a back three for Ireland, and to put that marker down before Zebo comes back in and to make things a little bit more complicated. It's also going to be very interesting down the line when we get to see Stockdale and Earls playing once again to see where they're at. I do think that the man in the back three who is safe as houses is Hugo Keenan, and he's not going anywhere. He's been a real breakout star for Ireland in those positions. I think as time has gone by, we've kind of like looked for the new and shiny thing, and maybe Keith Earls has always been the man who's overlooked in that regard and has still been the kind of dependable guy there and putting in really good performances pretty much all the time. So whether or not there's actually going to be an opening remains to be seen, but if Zebo's available, you got to take Zebo back. And as you say, he's been outstanding for Racing over the last little while, and you'd like to think that he'll bring that form back home as well. But Baloucoune is going to be the one. Baloucoune is the new and shiny thing with regards to that people are going to be really excited to see this summer. Yeah, and it's funny, these matches seem completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things when you're kind of looking at results. They absolutely don't matter. But if somebody does put in an amazing performance that catches the eyes of the coaches, that does everything that the coaches ask them to do, that improves on their club performance, then all of a sudden you can get into the team and not get out of it. That's the possibility here. While others are away, you suddenly nail down that position, you do everything, you become a coach's pet, and all of a sudden you're in the team. Without question. And there are certain areas where that you can nudge yourself into the team and stay there. I think there are going to be other positions this summer where there's going to be an opportunity handed to you on a silver platter, and you just don't have to do too badly in order for you to take that opportunity. And I think that is the case when it comes to out half. Joey Carberry is probably going to start his first test for Ireland in just under 2 years. Yeah. When he plays this summer, I think August 2019 was the last time he started a game. With Craig Casey probably inside him? Yeah. I'm not sure about Casey, but I think with Carberry it's sort of, if you play well, you're our guy now for the next little while. Like Rory O'Connor has the stat that they've played 14 games in the Farrell era so far. There are 21 matches to go before the World Cup warm-ups. So you're edging towards a fairly significant point in this World Cup cycle, and Carberry, I'm sure Andy Farrell has in mind to be Ireland's starting 10 at the next World Cup. So this is a vital summer for him, because those 21 matches obviously dwindle this time next year, and if Sexton is still your number one guy for the Six Nations next year, you can't blame the head coach for picking his best out half. So it's really important for Carberry to really make it a debate between himself and Sexton for the best fit starting out half in Irish rugby, in order for him to be a relatively seasoned test starter come the time of the World Cup. Obviously in that position as well, it'll be interesting to see how much of an opportunity Harry Byrne gets, because Ross Byrne, it seems, has been pushed back down the pecking order just a little bit on the national scene. Been so good for Leinster, but
he's injured at the moment as well, so there's no opportunity for him to kind of get in even to camp and go, no, hang on a second, look how amazing I am when we're doing all these drills. And Billy Burns as well, obviously been kind of out of the picture as well. So this is Harry's time now. I do think that when the opportunity comes around next year, what we're hearing from Leinster is that obviously Harry Byrne is so highly thought of, but when we see the actual team selection and when it came to really important moments in this year's campaign, Ross Byrne was obviously picked. Now Harry Byrne had his injury troubles as well during this season at really unfortunate times for him. It felt certainly when it came to the international scene, but this is his opportunity now if he is going to get a bit of a look in, and maybe they're looking at Byrne and maybe they're looking at Carberry as a two that they want to take from this squad. I've always said it though, I do think that Ross Byrne is the one that maybe people overlook a little bit, and he'll obviously still be of an age profile to be right at his peak when Sexton does depart the scene, so he's not going to be going anywhere. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Billy Burns over the next little while, but you do have
three young out-halves there who are, well, two young out-halves and one maybe a little bit older who are ready to kind of step into the void over the next little while. So I think you were making the point yesterday that it's a shame that it's not a full summer tour to have.
It's a disaster, really. Like, not a disaster, there's no disaster in sport. But, you know, from like the excitement that we might have with seeing Caelan Doris, Gavin Coombs, Ryan Baird all in the same team with Joey Carberry playing 3 tests against the Islanders. Like, that would have been brilliant.
Yeah, and like, I mean, when it comes to these Lions summers as well, quite often what you see is a future line making their mark in the Ireland team. It's just, it opens up so many opportunities. There's maybe less of a pressure situation as well, given all eyes are kind of on the other on another rugby team in those sort of summers. So they'd be kind of like, I mean, when it comes to those who are actually kind of stalwarts of the team, and like, it's a big summer as well for the likes of Ringrose and James Ryan, just to show that they're the new leadership group of this team and to kind of right the wrongs of what might have happened during the season. And then, of course, everybody's going to be talking about Gavin Coombs, who has quickly been, I guess, fast-tracked into a level of importance when we're talking about the future of this Ireland team. And that is obviously as a result of CJ Stander, because I think even before the retirement news, I think there was a hope that Stander might have been around for the next World Cup, or that might have been ambitious. So
no, I don't think so. I think that's right. I think that certainly in everybody's head, this contract that he would have got at the end of this year would have taken him up to the next World Cup, and he would have been around the squad, like potentially a 6 as Caelan Doris became the 8, but potentially the bench player. And what a brilliant bench player that would have been, somebody with 70 caps coming off the bench in the World Cup, who you absolutely know is going to. Or in those group games, like, you know, definitely had a big role to play, I think. But all of a sudden, the opportunity knocks for Gavin Coombs, and I think the Munster under-20 captain is in the paper today as well. Sorry, the Ireland under-20 captain is a Munster back rower who is another number 8 coming through as well. So that production line is there. It's just that the time between now and the World Cup is limited.
A Coombs, Van der Fleer, maybe Caelan Doris back line or back row is.
Well, Peter O'Mahony's in the squad.
Well, there you go.
He wasn't rested. That's interesting, isn't it? It's like they're like, look, this is the competition for you, and we want to see. And obviously, the leadership that you get from Peter O'Mahony in a situation like this, you know, that those intangibles that we never actually see, but you certainly hear about. That O'Mahony brings that intensity and just that experience. Like, he's a Lions captain. Test series Lions captain who's going to be around that squad, so no better way to get an introduction to the Ireland setup for those new caps than being hammered by Peter O'Mahony in training at some point.
Yeah, and like, I mean, he's obviously going to be the kind of the actual leader there, and there's going to be so many other players who are going to need to step up in and around that. Like, if we talk about some of the names that were always going to be going on the lines, like Robbie Henshaw is one of those names, for example. Tyke Byrne would be another one. I think it's pretty clear who the wannabe Tyke Burns are, for lack of a better phrase, in the Ireland camp. But when it comes to the wannabe Robbie Henshaws, like, I think we've become so ingrained in the 4 names that we've had in Ireland's midfield over the last little while, where it's been Henshaw and Ringrose, and if it's not those two, then Aki comes in, and if it's not him, then it's going to be Farrell, and that's it. That I just wonder, maybe, is there a lack of depth developing there? So this could be a big summer for someone like Stuart McCluskey maybe as well, who might get a few minutes beside Gary Ringrose. So, like, obviously having 4 midfielders is all you generally need, and Ireland have generally only needed the 4. It's only been in very extreme scenarios where they've had to dip down below that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be a bad thing to start realising what is option 5 and what is option 6, because there's no way that your 4 will always be the 4 in form.
Look, while Robbie Henshaw was on there, I was saying, is there any way that Robbie Henshaw could ever play in the wing for Ireland that you'd have, say against South Africa, or say, I don't know, against France or against England, for example, that you want your beef in the middle, and you've got Chris Farrell and Bundy Aki, and on the wing you've got Robbie Henshaw. Like, I'd love to just see this happen in tests and see what it looks like, because on the same side of that, right, there are other games where you'd like to see what would happen if you had a 10 and a 12, and the 12 was actually a 10, and in this instance Joey Carberry is the person. Imagine having that creativity, but that kicking ability and that ability to drop the shoulder. Like, from a defensive perspective, if on their set piece you decide that you put your winger as the number 1 defender, I don't know, there must be some ways to do this, that, like, just let's see what this looks like. But as you keep saying, there's only 20 games between now and the World Cup.
When you listen to Henshaw speak there about, I guess, the difference between 12 and 13, I mean, he does fairly define it quite well, actually. There is obviously a clear difference in the roles expected of the 12 and the 13, but in reality, it does seem as if those lines are blurring quite a bit between those two positions, and that there is just a general skill set, and it's all about your positional awareness. That it does seem that the transition to another role in the back line looks more possible than it would have been 10 years ago when it comes to rugby. We've seen, obviously, the interchange between 10 and 12 so often now in so many different teams, the interchange between 10 and 15. The wings seem to be the separate thing, except for your Kieran Marmion, of course, playing on the wing against Australia at that one time.
Yeah.
But it could be something worth exploring. Like Ireland's back three, as we were saying, there's a few really exciting options there, a few tried and trusted options there who haven't really put a foot wrong just yet. But I don't know, I think 21 games is still like a nice room for experimentation.
It is plenty. Just one last point as well. So Jack Conan and Tadhg Byrne come back from the Lions having won a test series, nailed down positions as starting lines, and then come back and find themselves kicked out of the Ireland team. Like that's the level of competition we have in the back row at the moment, where, you know, if Kildare is going to be our starting 8 if he's fully fit and back to form, right? And then after that, all of a sudden, it's like, well, you know, maybe there's not that much room left for those two there's a scenario there that's not beyond the bounds of possibility. If you want to comment on that, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. A reminder, OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Some breaking news. Christian Eriksen has posted this on his Instagram. It's a picture from his hospital bed. Big thanks for your sweet and amazing greetings and messages from all around the world. It means a lot to me and my family. I'm fine under the circumstances. I still have to go through some examinations at the hospital, but I feel okay. Now I'll cheer on the boys in the Denmark team in the next matches. Play for all of Denmark. Okay, best Christian, or is it OX? And that's a hugs and kisses. So Christian Eriksen, alive and well. Like, again, the miracle of modern science and the speed at which everybody acted. That is just one of those moments that definitely travel around the world, and we're all kind of trying to deal with how we feel about it, you know. It's just pretty harrowing stuff. Anyway, he's okay, and that's the first official communication from him. We've heard stuff from people who've been talking to him. Kasper Schmeichel was saying he'd been talking to him, and his agent had obviously being quoted in the Italian press as well. So that's the crack at that. 8:42, Will O'Callaghan is here with us. Will, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, good lads. The group of death getting underway at Euro 2020 today. You've got the reigning champions Portugal kicking off their Group F campaign away to Hungary in Budapest. That one's at 5 p.m. Hopefully with a game something similar to 5 years ago. In 2016, it finished 3-3 between the sides, and Hungary led on 3 different occasions in that one. That's before the tournament favourites France go to Munich to take on their neighbours Germany at 8 p.m. The good news for Les Bleus is that Karim Benzema and Antoine Griezmann have been past fit. They've shaken off knocks. They were unable to play against Bulgaria last week, and they're expected to start up front alongside Kylian Mbappe this evening. Griezmann scored both goals when France beat Germany 2-0 in the semis 5 years ago. Last night, 3-time winner Spain saw a couple of good chances missed by Alvaro Morata in either half as they were held to a goalless draw by Sweden. That was after Poland suffered a 2-1 defeat against Slovakia in Group E. The Scotland manager Steve Clarke has given an update this morning on Kieran Tierney. He says he's got a chance of being fit for Friday's now must-win clash with England. The Arsenal defender missed their opening match of the tournament when they were beaten 2-0 against the Czech Republic yesterday. As you mentioned, Denmark midfielder Christian Eriksen has written a message to thank people for their support from all around the world. He's tweeted to say he's fine under the circumstances after he suffered a cardiac arrest during the game against Finland at the weekend. Eriksen says he's staying in hospital for more exams and he's looking forward to cheering on Denmark for the rest of the tournament. At the Copa America last night, Argentina were left frustrated in their opening match. Leo Messi scored a stunning goal from a free kick to put them in front, but they were held to a 1-1 draw by Chile. Eduardo Vargas headed in the second half equaliser for Chile after Arturo Vidal's penalty had been saved. On the pitch later today, the Republic of Ireland's women's team will be aiming to win their first game since March 2020. Vera Pauwside are away to Iceland for a friendly, having lost 3-2 to the same opposition last week. Kick-off in that one's at 6 p.m. Shamrock Rovers will find out their Champions League first-round qualifying opponents today. The Hoops will be drawn against one of Legia Warsaw, Malmo, Slovan Bratislava, or the Lincoln Red Imps from Gibraltar, who are probably the team they'll want. Bohemian, Sligo and Dundalk are also in the qualifying draw for the opening round of the new Europa Conference League. Vinnie Perth could be set for a return as Dundalk FC manager some 10 months after being sacked by the club. He was replaced by Filippo Giovagnoli following the Lily Whites' exit from the Champions League qualifiers last year. The club's American owners are now reportedly keen on bringing the former Electricity League Premier Division and EA Sports Cup winning boss back for another spell in charge. Horse Racing Ireland, meanwhile, have encouraged anyone who believes those within the industry are doping to come forward. At the weekend, veteran trainer Jim Bulger claimed doping in racing was widespread. He's demanded more testing from the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board. In response to OTB Sports last night, they say they've restated their zero tolerance for doping and will conduct 5,000 tests this year. We Ger Lyons on Off the Ball last night, which is available on our podcast if you want to listen back to that. British Racing's biggest crowd for 15 months at Royal Ascot today. 12,000 spectators will be allowed in on each of the 5 days as part of a test event. 2,000 guineas winner Poetic Flair is the favourite for the feature race, which is the St James's Palace Stakes. And Kildare GAA chairman Mick Gorman has been speaking to The Independent today, and he says he has no knowledge of any spitting incident in last weekend's win against Meath. Royals boss Andy McEntee claimed that Conor McGill had been spat at before he was sent off in the Division 2 semi-final at Newbridge. Gorman told the paper that no one other than McEntee has made such a claim, and he says he's received no contact about it so far from the GAA.
Yeah, there's a report in one of the other papers saying that there's no video evidence, and so therefore the matter is closed. But if you were spat at, you'd feel pretty upset about it, and if you were accused of spitting and didn't do it, you'd feel pretty upset about it. So this is one of those he said, she said that unless there is conclusive video footage, we're not going to get to the bottom of, are we?
No, I don't think so. And like the video footage which they showed on League Sunday, many people may well have watched on GAA Go, it kind of captured the melee, but not the incident that seemed to spark it. So the camera kind of cut back to that sideline when players were already having a bit of a coming together, to use an old term for that. But there was no indication that the spit had happened. And it was only really after McEntee's interviews, I think with the written press after the game, that claim had been made. And RT said they'd gone through the footage and they showed what they could. And I didn't see anything that actually started the incident. So unless there's a different camera angle or a stats team was taping it or something like that, I'm guessing video evidence probably doesn't exist. Okay, and in which case you would expect no repercussions for anybody on either side at that point? It's like whatever appears in the referee's report will obviously have a big influence. Yeah, it all depends on the referee's report, and the feeling would be that the referee obviously took action in terms of yellow cards and red cards as opposed to being one red each or a couple of yellows each. So I would imagine that the referee's report is probably going to be quite lengthy and quite detailed because they took their time about it at the weekend as well. So it's all really going to be determined by that. But at least what we've heard over the last 24 hours, it appears no video to back up the claims that were made by Andy McEntee, but that's not to say they didn't happen. Okay, one last thing. We've really got to know Vinnie Perth quite well in terms of his brilliant statistical and technical analysis and breakdown of everything from the Republic of Ireland to the Champions League to the Premier League and future Ireland stars as well. Unfortunately, I hope it's not going to be lost to us, but it may well be. And he made no secret of his desire to get back to Dundalk. It looks like this is nearly done, is it? Yeah, it's this one is a really kind of strange moving story because earlier yesterday, it seemed that Dundalk were going to go in a different direction and get their former player Dave Rodgers to come in as, I think what they were calling it was a first team coach as opposed to being their manager. And the idea that he would come in and he would be assisted by Jim Magilton, and Magilton would still be the licence holder who would sit on the bench, but there would be a chance for Rodgers to learn from for the rest of this season because, Dundalk have been just so crazily indifferent, and maybe their season summed up by losing against a Waterford team who looked entirely hapless and were beaten at home 3-1 just after the break last weekend. And this manager search has obviously dragged on. Vinnie Perth has spoken on Off the Ball and on OTB AM about the fact that he has a desire to go back. He feels that he has unfinished business. He was sacked 10 months ago when they were on a poor run of form, but principally because of their exit from the Champions League qualifiers. Filippo Giovagnoli comes in. They get a very favourable draw for the next couple of rounds of qualifying. They get to the Europa League. And understandably, Peak Six at that point had to hand out a contract to Giovagnoli and his coaching team because the feeling would be that he would have achieved the objective that would have been put before him before he took the job. But, under Giovagnoli and the mess that we had at the start of the season where Shane Keegan was moved from being effectively an opposition analyst when he came to the club under Vinnie Perth, to then within no time at all, less than a year, becoming the first team manager because he holds a licence. That didn't look good. And then Magilton, who at one point claimed it was more likely that members of the media who were at the first press conference would be sitting on the Dundalk bench than him. He's been there for the last 7 or 8 games now, and Dundalk have been so up and down. Like, they've had some good results, like the way they played against Bows, but then they back it up by performances like last Friday night. So they're still within a possibility of getting into Europe, even though their rivals Drogheda have been the surprise story, and maybe they can be the team to qualify ahead of them. So the feeling might be that with just under half of the season to go, get a manager in place, have a steady finish to the season, and Dundalk might yet be in the Conference League draw for next year as well. I'm just kind of surprised that Vinnie Perth would be looking to go back, given the way that he left. But all reports seem to be that Vinnie Perth has maintained quite a good relationship with Peak Six since he left, and that now, at this stage, as we speak on a Tuesday morning, he's their preferred candidate to come back to the club. Talks have been ongoing, and it seems that Vinnie Perth is going back into the dugout with the Lily Whites.
Well, I wish him very well. Will, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. Cheers.
Cheers.
8:50 this morning here on OTB AM. At 12:30 today, we're going to be releasing the very latest episode of Dadcast. It features a very special guest appearance from Ireland and Munster legend Paul O'Connell, who joins the podcast with thanks to Gillette. You can follow more on that at the hashtag #BestFaceForward. Here he is talking about how girls and boys are treated differently from a young age.
I really love the kids to play sports, whatever sports it is. I'd really love to play, and I'd love them to keep playing them into adult. Not just to play it into adulthood, not just to play it till they're 13 or 14. And I've a 6-year-old girl that I'm hoping gets the bug for some kind of a sport and keeps playing it. And it's so easy for the boys. Like, there's so many other boys that are into other sports around them, whereas that isn't necessarily the case for the girls yet, even though I think we're heading in the right direction. And I was at a marketing thing about a year ago, but there was a lady from the Scottish Football Federation, and she was into promoting the game for women and girls. And one of the things she said was, she asked the people in the room, who have boys and girls, when you have boys, you buy them jerseys straight away, and you take a photo of them. I've photos of my boy with holding a hurley when he can only lie in the cot, and there's a rugby ball in the cot, and there's all kinds of stuff, and we didn't do that for my daughter, and she was saying that's what we do, we pretend, or we think we want all our kids we want our girls to play sports, but subconsciously we actually don't give them the same encouragement as we give our boys. And I was texting my wife, because I'm always arguing with my wife, we should be dressing her in tracksuit bottoms and jerseys the same as Paddy. But my wife kind of dresses her a little bit girly and stuff. But and so that'd be my only worry. I'd love. I was chatting to a lady the other day. She's 32. She's 2 kids, and she was talking about dying to be able to get back training. She plays camogie, I think, and I'd love for my daughter to be, in her 20s or in her 30s and playing GAA or rugby or playing golf or whatever it is. But they definitely don't get the same encouragement. I think some of the ads on TV at the moment are great. I think there's a brilliant ad, a Paralympic ad where Ellen Keane is in it. So those just, I know it's a cliche, but, the girls need to see other girls playing sports on TV, on the newspaper, on TV ads to keep them playing. And I'd love for Lola to keep playing sports.
The Dadcast available from 12:30 today. Really good stuff as usual from Paul O'Connell. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. It is time now for, I've been looking forward to this for a while, this week's pressure rankings. Eoin, take it away.
Power rankings, not pressure rankings.
Pressure on me, downward pressure.
The power rankings are here, they're back. This is our last time before the championship to bring you up to speed on the most correct and perfect, flawless power rankings. Let's get this over in Dunmouth from number 32 down to 1. At number 32 this week is the non-mover of London. At 31 is Waterford. Leitrim and Sligo dropping down to 30 and 29 respectively. Wexford are up to 28th. Carlow down to 27th. Louth's win at the weekend brings them up to 26th. And then finishing off that first page, slightly controversially, because this has been a deck that has been shuffled considerably over the course of the weekend. Wicklow are a non-mover. I just couldn't find a higher spot for them, which has pained me to say it, but I just couldn't find a higher spot for Wicklow as much as I tried. So they're staying there at 25. 24. Westmeath dropped down to 24. I just couldn't drop them down to 25. Just couldn't do it to Westmeath, maybe because Westmeath are also quite vociferous in their criticism of this. They're at 24. Longford up to 23. Obviously, they had that big win over Tip at the weekend. At 22, Fermanagh drop one spot after last weekend. They lost to Offaly at the weekend. Antrim, according to these rankings, the 21st best team in Ireland now. The big fallers this week. These guys were both in the top 8 or 9 at the end of last year. Tipperary and Cavan both down to 20th and 19th respectively. Risers though in Laois and Limerick. Laois kind of rising as a result of Tip and Cavan falling so considerably. And same story really for Limerick, although Limerick have had a good National League campaign. Down then, up after beating Laois by 7 points at the weekend. A really impressive result from them to stay in Division 2. Offaly also on the rise once again. They've won 4 games in the bounce this year. A really informed team. They're going to play Derry this weekend in Croke Park in a game that should actually be a bit of a cracker. That's your number 14 team, which is Derry. Another of the big fallers this week is County Meath. Probably the most talked about county on this particular slot. For a team that's ranked 13th in the country, why do we waste so much time? They're down in 13. Clare stay put at number 12. They lost at the weekend to Mayo. Cork, another riser or faller this week. Cork, they're down to 11th. And there they are, Ger, the moment you've been waiting for. Kildare.
Top 10, baby.
Number 10, just behind Roscommon.
Top 10. To the good people of Meath, all the way from Meath Hill, which is basically Monaghan, to South Drogheda, which is effectively Louth, to Bettystown, which is effectively Dublin, to Ashburn, which is effectively Dublin, or kind of bang a Kildare off it, to the rolling flatlands in the middle of Meath. We say, screw you, babies. Screw you. That one time that you beat us last year in, I don't know what the hell happened in the second half, completely fluky performance. You banged in all those goals, and we've been listening to nothing but jibber jabber for essentially 12 months, 12 grim months of jibber jabber from the people of Meath. Well, you can all go and shite. That's all I have to say to you guys, because Eoin's power rankings finally, after all this time, are correct and unimpeachable. Woohoo!
This is like the season's over for Kildare now, really, isn't this?
Look, it doesn't matter. Division 1 football next season. Oh, banging on. I've been listening to Tommy banging on week in, week out, hijacking. We've got 2 of the greatest football analysts in perfect symmetry and concert. And Tommy's like, can we just talk a bit more about Meath? Can we just talk a bit more about Meath? And it's like, no, we can't. Meath are banned from the Paddy and Andy podcast from this point forward until they win Leinster. And then we should allow Tommy to have them talk about it again. But in the meantime, I mean, come on, like, they lose the game and all anybody's talking about afterwards is an incident. Fair enough. Okay, the incident's probably quite serious and we should talk about it and deal with it. But this was a Meath team who were Division 1 footballers. That's what we heard. This is a team who've been building for ages and ages and ages. And we had to listen to the nonsense that they were spouting about Kildare when all of a sudden they couldn't even get it done and all our best players going off injured.
You'll be delighted to hear as well that Meath and Kildare are being kept on opposite sides of the draw this year. So Kildare, they just have to beat possibly Offaly, then Dublin to get to a Leinster final. Meath have to beat probably Longford, then Laois or Westmeath. So there's your Kildare-Meath Leinster final pretty happily.
For what it's worth, I would give off a very good chance of beating Kildare in the championship the way things are going at the moment. Look, I think the point has been made again and again. You've got to be in Division 1 if you're going to be in any way a serious football county over a sustained period of time. And, you know, we see the yo-yo teams, we see the teams who like Meath and Roscommon are now yo-yo teams. And Kildare need to be a team who yo-yos up and then doesn't come back down, because the benefits are absolutely clear to see in Mayo and in Monaghan, that you can bring players into the squad, and if they can survive in Division 1, they become seasoned inter-county footballers who are capable of competing at championship level. And I think that ultimately this year, particularly with no back door, if you're a Leinster county, nothing mattered except the league.
And I think that we can see that from the decision as well this weekend to actually play Offaly against Derry. From those two counties' perspectives as well, it's the league is all that matters, and that's a really good opportunity to try and put one final marker down and actually get a bit of silverware and come away from the season and say this is our progress, because while they've both been really good, they're not going to be Ulster or Leinster champions. I know saying that about Ulster champions is probably unwise given the events of last year, but it's probably not going to happen. I think the last weekend of football that we saw was this really important, it was a crazy weekend, and there was this sense maybe from counties like Mayo in particular where they will feel that they got away scot-free from being associated with Division 2, for example.
Yeah.
It's half the amount of games. They went down to get promoted straight away, and they haven't really lost much progress. Same goes for Kildare. Now all of a sudden they're back in. Their opportunity to play Division 1 hasn't been wasted in the pandemic year. It's going to probably anyway. It's going to be a full league campaign next season, a full round of fixtures for them to actually test themselves against the best. And that's also why it was really important for Armagh to get the win at the weekend, to actually stay in this division, to actually beat Roscommon and hold on to their Division 1 status, because next year is where those gains will really be made by actually, from their perspective, to actually play Mayo and Kerry and Dublin, which brings us nicely on to the top 8. So at number 8, Galway, the Fallers here, down 2 places.
Are Galway a little bit lucky to be still clinging on? Or is the game against Monaghan actually a really good game for them to have gone through and get that extra half an hour of football? I can't decide if the defeat is so crushing and, you know, Pádraig Joyce didn't speak to the media afterwards, or is that the type of thing that 2 weeks out from Championship is exactly what you need?
I think that in the context of the Championship, it could be something to light a fire under them. Clearly what happened to them in the league last year was something that motivated them greatly when they came up against Mayo, because it was an entirely different performance you saw in the Championship. But you can't be looking at this Galway project with too much of a short-term view, because we know that what they've done in terms of their quest for All-Irelands in the recent past hasn't resulted in them really coming close to an All-Ireland. I know that they did get to an All-Ireland semi-final that one time, but I'm not sure that Dublin really let them get very close to them that day at all, to be quite honest with you. So I do think this has to be a long-term view of what they do, and not having that Division 1 experience next year is going to be something that hurts them and does set them back. But as you say, maybe this is something that does light a fire under them. I do think, Paddy Andrews was saying this on the show yesterday, that he would be astonished if Mayo don't win Connacht this year. They would certainly be my favourites as well. But I do think that this could be that there could be a few hairy moments for them in that province this year, because they might come in just a little bit colder as a result of playing half a Division 2 campaign this year. And I do think that Galway will be motivated from what happened. Their one win in the league this year, Galway, was beating Roscommon by 6 points. I would have Galway, as you can see in the rankings here, as firmly as the second best team in Connacht, and maybe a ball bounces their way this year against Mayo. And I know they came pretty close. They were pretty unlucky down the home stretch against them last year. Maybe they can cause an upset. So I wouldn't be engraving Mayo's name into the Connacht Trophy just yet. I do think Galway could cause an upset there. But they are down to 8 because it was a poor league campaign, no getting away from that. Monaghan, though, up. They leapfrogged them naturally after beating them at the weekend. They're up to 7th place. And this has been a good league campaign for Monaghan, I think, all things considered.
I just think that we don't give Monaghan football enough credit for the per capita numbers they have, the quality of football they have, the skill set they have, the excitement when you watch Monaghan play football. Like, invariably, they're trying to do something when they are in possession of the ball that's aggressive and attacking, and they are aggressive when you don't have the ball. And like, whatever organisation they've put in place in that county when it comes to running football, like, every other county in Ireland should be up there just watching. What do you do? How do you do it? What's going on? Why are you so good?
Yeah, and obviously there was just great scenes. Banty, obviously, with his band during this league campaign, celebrating the nice check shirt, the Matt LeBlanc shirt at the weekend. They still have so much quality in a varying degree of positions. That score from Conor McMahon, Slade on, to actually force the game into the extra time was a brilliant score, and you just never thought that he wasn't going to nail it when he got the ball in that position. Jack McCarron obviously is somebody that people have kept an eye on over the last couple of years and has always been top class. Same goes for Conor McCarthy. So their forward talent is brilliant.
Do you know what the population of Monaghan is?
It is 50,000.
60-ish.
Okay. Close. Which is like that's the Division 4 population playing Division 1 football.
Swords, Tala, bigger, much bigger.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like
amalgamate Monaghan and Cavendish.
Well, whatever they're doing, it's amazing. 61,386 is what it says in what census? I can't even. 2016 census.
It's always the same. They just go back to the county and it always just clocks up the exact same result. Number 6, Armagh are up 1 to 6th spot. Just couldn't move them any higher. Maybe they will feel that they should be ahead of Tyrone, but Tyrone to beat them in this league campaign. Armagh, like beating Roscommon by 9 points at the weekend, was significant.
From 6 or 7 points down at the start. Like Roscommon started like a house on fire, and then Armagh very calmly just decided, okay, we understand what we're going to do here, and horsed through.
I feel sometimes that you need to strike while the iron is hot as a footballing county sometimes. So, like
smash and grab.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, didn't Roscommon beat Armagh in the Division 2 final last year? That they were the two that went up, but Roscommon beat them anyway. And it was kind of like, right, Armagh are going up, but Roscommon are still better than Armagh. And whereas on the evidence of the weekend, it's like Armagh, they've overtaken Roscommon over the last couple of months. They've really made that stride forward, and it feels that if they'd lost that game at the weekend, they might have got into this endless loop of being a yo-yo team, kind of like how Roscommon are, how Cavan, when they eventually get promoted over the next couple of years again, will return to be. And I'm just not sure if there's any joy in that, if there's any hope of actually winning, of contending for an All-Ireland in that. Whereas with Armagh, they're kind of on this upward trajectory at the moment where they're probably thinking, how high can this thing go for us? Like, they may not win an Ulster Championship this year. Like, they were desperately disappointing against Donegal in that competition last year. But on the evidence so far, they've improved quite a bit. I think that they are the one team that you can really make a case that they've made a big step forward from 2020 on a whole range of levels.
Yeah, and that's again, like if there was qualifiers or Super 8s or some round robin or some more games, more than one game, they're precisely the demographic of team who would benefit from those, and we would actually get to see how close they are to the top tier at the moment, because they're clearly not in the top tier.
I would say just outside it, yeah. And well, I suppose the top tier is 2 counties really at the moment. Tyrone are number 5 and non-mover, Donegal a non-mover at number 4. Like Tyrone, obviously, I thought that they'd be dropping this week, to be honest. But I think the fact that they've actually beaten Armagh already this year maybe is saving them a little bit. They were very, very poor on Saturday. Donegal losing by 4 points against Dublin. Nobody's going to drop as a result of that. Mayo a non-mover at 3. We've always made this point that they're being completely insulated from real criticism over the last month. I will totally accept that, but we will see during the Connacht Championship whether or not they're still at last year's level.
Yeah, I think that like having a Division 2 team above those other teams, particularly when like Clare nearly caught them at the weekend. I think we're grandfathering Mayo in on the basis of the performances over the last decade, and to my mind, this shooing them in for the Connacht title at the moment, I'm not doing that. I actually think that when you consider last year, the turnaround between the league game and the Connacht Championship game in winter, I would not be at all surprised, and I don't think it's an upset if Galway beat them. Like, Mayo would be slight favourites for that game because, again, they've been grandfathered into the position of favouritism on the basis of historic results over the last half decade or so. But honestly believe that that's a 50-50 game, and really Galway with their Division 1 and having come through battle hardened. Like, what did Mayo learn about themselves in that game against Clare at the weekend? It's that if we take our eye off the ball, we're going to get absolutely annihilated. Like, what did Mayo learn from last year's All-Ireland semi-final, which was essentially a bit of a cakewalk for them in the end in the fog? I don't know. I'm not sure.
And there have been like a number of those moments. Like, I mean, they come back after the break for the pandemic last year and they end up getting relegated. They sneak past Galway in Connacht, and they come up against a team that is now playing Division 4 football in the All-Ireland semi-final before coming up short against Dublin. And it did start very well against Dublin. I think the one thing that they learned, and they're constantly learning, is that Cillian O'Connor is going to go down in history as one of the greatest forwards of all time, and is the most important player in this Mayo team. I think that there was always a sense that he was the most important scoring forward that they had. Then he became the most important forward, and now he's the most important player at bar none to this point.
And limped off at the weekend.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Like, there's definitely, for me, there's an asterisk beside Mayo at 3. I understand why you've done it, but I actually, like, let's say Cillian O'Connor's injured. Let's say we know now that he's injured and he's going to miss a month of football.
Well, then if Michael Murphy's fit, if we can assume that about that, and if Colin McShane is fit, then I would say that they would be almost down to 5 at that point. But the problem is that it seems that injuries are part and parcel of every team at the moment, and it would be unfair to just drop Mayo down a few places.
He's their most important player, you've just said.
Well, Michael Murphy is Donegal's most important player, and I think Colin McShane is Tyrone's most important player. So, like, they're all missing their most important player, or they have doubts about their most important player. And for those 3 counties, that is the difference between them being a contender or not, as far as I'm concerned, because they need to be fully loaded if they're going to stand a chance against Dublin. I do think, while we're saying that Kerry and Dublin are a tier above everybody else, Kerry are 2, Dublin are at 1, by the way, I do think Kerry are also in the same boat as Mayo, Donegal and Tyrone, where they need to be fully loaded against Dublin just to get that first win. If they manage to get over Dublin and win the All-Ireland this year, then maybe you can make a different argument next year, but they need to stay injury-free, and it's been something that Peter Keane has said a lot over the league, that staying injury-free was his main aim, and it seems, touch wood, that that's exactly what they've managed to do. There hasn't been the Cillian O'Connor type injury where you've seen it mid-game, or a John Small type injury where somebody has got injured. But they're in at number 2, Dublin are in at number 1, and I think the weekend would definitely accelerate this notion that the 2 are pulling away from the rest, and maybe the ghost of 2020 means that they won't be caught when it comes to that All-Ireland matchup this year.
The gap is closed, no doubt about it. I think Kerry are right there with Dublin at the moment, and I think if you were to coldly analyse the amount of talent and caps that have been stripped out of that Dublin team, and look, until we see Cluxton in the championship, we haven't seen him play this year.
Yeah,
no, he was off playing with the club at the weekend. Fair enough. Maybe he's fully fit. Maybe that's just, like, I'd like to have seen him play 1 game in the league. I mean, okay, granted, the Leinster Championship is a glorified league campaign for the Dubs, and they don't need to worry about anything in the Leinster Championship, particularly if Meath are going to be suffering suspensions and Kildare suffering the injuries. So let's wait and see. But I think Kerry, I think you can make the case in the power rankings after the league that they're joint top. They shared the league. I would say Kerry's league campaign was actually, in the end, better than Dublin's.
They scored more and conceded less.
I know that, and they drew in the game that they played. So, like, I don't think anymore this is 1 and 2. I think this is 1-1A.
I think on league form, yes, I would agree with you. I just think that the Cluxton thing is just unavoidable. I think that the way Fenton was played that day in Thurles is unavoidable. He'll have a different role, and that's your 2 most important players. But you can't get away from the fact that this Dublin team has been stripped of its greats. Once you have the greatest team of all time, you can't not be a little bit reliant on them. And Aidan O'Rourke, I pointed this out in his column yesterday as well, that those defensive talents and the kind of chipping away of them over the last couple of years when it comes to their ageing legs and to the retirements, that will result in this Dublin defence being more leaky. Now, the stats will always show every defence to be more leaky at the moment because this was played in extremely favourable conditions, this league campaign. But I think it is hammered home by the fact that this Dublin defence maybe isn't where it once was, which was like all-time great. So it's not saying they're bad or anything. It's just they're not an all-time great potentially defence anymore. The previous Dublin defence was.
Yeah, absolutely. 12 minutes past 9. That is this week's edition of the Power Rankings. Feel free to dispute or complain. Unless you're from me, then we don't want to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or of course, you can get us in the comments on YouTube, and many of you already have. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio across the day. At 11 o'clock live, it's the Euro 2020 show in the capable hands of Sheahan. At 1 o'clock today, it's OTB Gold, the Wexford 56 team with Ned Wheeler and Art Foley. Dadcast with Paul O'Connell from 3 o'clock. Our Legends interview is Matt Holland at 4. OTB Gold is Joe meeting Ruby Walsh at 7 o'clock tonight live. Joe and the rest of the team back. Up next this Tuesday morning on OTB AM, Julien Lorenz joins us. We're talking about the fact that the beef is real in the French camp ahead of France against Germany tonight.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Don't know what to get your golf mad dad for Father's Day? Well, you do now. A subscription to Golf Weekly, the best golf podcast on the planet. Packed full of interviews with top golfers.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks.
Watch parties with Golf Weekly guests.
This is our first ever major watch-along party.
And tips on how to improve your dad's game. For the perfect gift this Father's Day, and just $3.99 a month, go to otbsports.com/golfweekly.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports Betting app for the latest betting and stats on every player and team with the Boyle Sports Euro Stats Centre. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports. This is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Will has been in touch to talk about Patrick Schick. How do you say it?
Yeah, nailed it.
To lob a keeper from there is impressive enough, but to put a curl on it is Morris Fitz level. Yeah, look, it's just a moment of instinctive genius, isn't it?
Yeah, how far left of the post the ball actually starts is very noticeable at that point. All right. Yeah, like I'm sure there was just definitely a tendency or a temptation to actually just take the ball and just run it into the opposition half, especially when you're 1-0 up at a massive tournament game. But to actually just go for it first time, it was crazy on so many different fronts, and it was a brilliant goal. His header was also great in the first half as well. Yeah. And if there's going to be one player who gets a massive contract from a new club, I know he's obviously been playing well for Leverkusen. It might actually be him. He might be the star that comes out of this tournament.
Frank Brennan says, I said before the Euros started that Scotland would be doing well to score 2 or 3 goals and never mind actually win a game in their group after yesterday's performance. I'm bang on track. Good man, Frank. Nice to have something horrible to look forward to and to be proven correct. That's the way to lead your life, really. That way happiness and fulfillment and nirvana lies, right?
I can see where he's coming from a little bit. Like there is this sense of begrudgery because we're not there. Like, I mean, and it is very easy to draw a few comparisons between the Scottish effort and the Irish effort that we would have seen in tournaments past, and we wanted to be unique to Ireland. And I mean, we had that draw against Sweden, and Scotland can't claim that after week 1 of this year's Euros. So maybe it's sort of a little bit of begrudgery on that front.
Big club snobbery looking down on Grealish, says Bonnie Hammer. Grealish has to play for City or United before he starts. Dennis Ryan says, in my opinion, Grealish is the most talented of all the English players, but Southgate is very conservative. One central defensive midfielder should be enough. Bellingham's class too, but Fowl's a bit too much for this level. He is absolutely a kid though, and you know that will come. And then Shifty Lad says, remember Lettis, Dennis, hopefully Grealish does well. I can't understand Grealish not being in the team, to be honest. It doesn't make any sense to me. Not even coming off the bench, particularly when you're defending a 1-0 lead. It's exactly the perfect time you want Grealish on the pitch.
Bellingham on for Harry Kane was quite the switch, all right, and maybe that was like taking Alexander Isak off for Sweden last night. It was this acceptance that 1-0 was the perfect result for England at that moment. Just on the one CDM should be enough. I guess what we're seeing is Calvin Phillips maybe not playing in that central defensive midfielder role for England. He's just far more advanced and is just allowed to get forward a lot more under Southgate.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens with that. Now, let's turn our attention to the big game tonight, which, as we have announced earlier on, means the tournament officially starts this evening. I'm delighted to say Julien Lorenz is with us from BT Sport, ESPN journalist covering French football. Julien, good morning to you. How are you?
Hello, guys. I'm really good, thank you. I'm really looking forward to tonight. A little bit stressed, but not too bad.
Well, we are absolutely fascinated with the human dynamics that are going on and the giant risk, it seems, that Didier Deschamps has taken on the verge of being one of the first people in human history to do what he's done. He's decided to introduce this free radical into the situation, and the chemical reactions that happen afterwards, I don't know what's going to happen. So can you talk to us a little bit about what the relationship is like between the strikers in the French squad at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, we've made, even in France, certainly last week, we've made a lot of this little argument between Olivier Giroud and Kylian Mbappé. But I can tell you that within the squad, it's not really a story. I mean, to start with, because Olivier Giroud will not have a big role to play, unfortunately for him, in this competition, unless there's an injury. But if there's no injury, you can maybe see him coming on late in a game if we need a goal, or certainly if we need to play in a different way. But apart from that, he's never going to start a game in this competition, because Benzema, Griezmann and Mbappe, if all is well, should start every single game. So the relationship between Griezmann, Benzema and Mbappe is fantastic. And I think this is really the one that you have to care about, because they're your three starters. They're the one that can make you win games and make you win this tournament. It's true that between Mbappe and Giroud, there was a bit of tension after the game against Bulgaria last Tuesday, when basically Giroud complained that Mbappe was not passing him the ball enough without naming Mbappe. Mbappe spoke to Giroud and said, listen, those kind of things have to stay in the dressing room. I don't know why you had to say it publicly in front of all the media, which I guess is a fair point. But again, I think those kind of little incident happens in every dressing room, whatever the level. I mean, we all play football. You've had in your footballing career, again, whatever the level and the league you play in, that kind of beef with someone saying, hey, why didn't you pass me the ball? I made a good run and the ball never came to me. That's basically what Giroud said. So again, I don't think we should make too much of it, because I really think it's a non-story right now. It was a bit of a story last week, but not anymore. And certainly I don't think we'll have an impact on the game tonight or the rest of the competition.
How did Benzema and Giroud get on?
Yeah, they spoke when Chelsea played Real Madrid this season in the Champions League. I don't think then that Benzema knew he was going to come back with the national team after being out for so long. But certainly he said, listen, what I said was a bit clumsy. That's not what I meant. And I think, listen, Olivier Giroud is a very intelligent guy. And if you ask Olivier Giroud, who is the best footballer, technically, for example, between you and Karim Benzema, he will say Karim Benzema, 100%. It's just not very nice when someone said, I'm a Formula One, you a go-kart. And I can understand why he was like, there was no need really for Benzema to make that sort of metaphor. But again, he knows who is the most talented of them two. And Giroud wants to win. If that means having Benzema in the team and win these Euros, and him not having a role as big as the one at the World Cup, but still winning in the end, I think he'd be happy with that.
There must be some part of Karim Benzema, Julien, that is a little bit jealous of Olivier Giroud in the fact that he has been held up as a goal scorer who has helped his country to World Cup glory. He's not too far off Thierry Henry in terms of the all-time goal-scoring quest, and he has that World Cup medal. These are things that Karim Benzema has been on the outside looking in at for quite some time. Surely as a competitor, that must just stoke a little bit of jealousy in Benzema's mind.
I think the World Cup one, yeah, for sure. And even missing the Euros 2016 in France and going to the final, and Karim watched all the games, both at the Euros and at the World Cup. That hurts. Otherwise, he will tell you he won 4 Champions League. And I guess Olivier Giroud now has won 1, but he won 4 Champions League and 2 La Ligas as well. So I don't think Karim Benzema, 1, is a jealous guy at all, and 2, will envy anybody else's trophy cabinet. However, you're right. I think the World Cup especially must have hurt him. He never really lost hope to come back and play with the national team, even after all those years, which is I think is good for him, because he could have easily given up and could have said, you know what, I'm retiring from international football because I know he's never going to call me back. And I think he deserves some credit to have never given up, really. But the way we should see it is the other way around. That's Benzema's mindset now is, hey, I've missed the Euros 2016, I missed the World Cup 2018, I missed winning this World Cup, but now I can make up for it if we win these Euros. And I really think that Benzema is almost on a mission now of like, okay, for myself to start with and my family, I've got all this time to make up for, and certainly that World Cup win that I missed out on to make up for, and I can do that by winning these Euros, and potentially he might still be there for the next World Cup too.
Well, I just checked. His birthday is the day after the World Cup final next
exactly,
year.
Exactly, yeah. And trust me, he knows that too well as well. Because his agent told me exactly the same thing as you. And, okay, he will be then almost 35 when that World Cup is being played. But considering how fit he is, and you see he's lost between 5 and 7 kilos in the last 18 months, and you see how lean he is. I think he's never been in as good fitness-wise than he is now. And he's 33, going 34 on December 27th, or December 20th or 21st. So I can definitely see him being there in Qatar. And I think he sees it in a way like, okay, I missed all of that, and it was partly my fault, partly not my fault, but there's nothing we can do. We can't go back in the past. But what I can do now is make sure that I win the next one, and then maybe the next one after that to make up for what I missed. And I think that's his mindset, and it's very much Deschamps' mindset as well, and the rest of the squad. Because the thing about Benzema coming back, and quickly to finish, the one who played with him, the Lloris, and even Giroud, Griezmann, Pogba, no problem. They know him. They know how good he is. But then the younger generation, the Mbappés and Dembélés, Koeman, all of them are like, wow, this is the Karim Benzema from Real Madrid, from the television when we've been watching him winning the Champions League and doing the tricks against Atletico Madrid, and scoring the back heel against Barcelona in the Clásico this season. And those guys are looking at him with big eyes, and almost like if he was a god almost. So I think the fact that he came back has certainly brought something very different to that squad in a very positive way, which I think can help the team now go in and win this tournament.
Well, that's it. We were talking earlier on, and Eoin used the phrase bromance about Mbappe and Benzema. And that's like, the perfect. That's how football works. There's the old guy and the young guy, and they decide that they're going to go out together and be gunslingers.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, someone from within the camp was telling me the other day that if you watch Mbappe at training, at the end when they do those drills where either you've got crosses and the strikers have to finish, or the ball comes from the goal kick line and they're on the edge of the box and they have to control and finish it. And Mbappe is literally watching Benzema like if you and I would watching Brazilian Ronaldo on YouTube now, and just watching, so, oh, wow, look what he does. But this is you and me, not Kylian Mbappe. And yet Kylian Mbappe is watching Karim Benzema with eyes like, oh my God, this is amazing what I'm watching. When potentially, technically, right now, Mbappe is maybe even better than Karim Benzema. So I think there's the bromance for sure, and they get on so well. But there's also those eyes of admiration from Mbappe towards Benzema, and I'm sure from Benzema towards Mbappe, because if you look at it, there's so much similarities between the two. They were both prodigies, really. Mbappe starting at 16 and something for Monaco. Karim was slightly later, but 17 and 2 months for Lyon. Very, very similar trajectory, similar path, in the sense that they were so good at youth level, even with the French youth teams, and then making big debuts in Ligue 1, and then for Benzema going very young to Real Madrid, and maybe Kylian will go very young soon to another top club as well. But it's fascinating when you see their two careers, certainly the start of them, and you can understand there why there's so much respect and admiration between them two, but also between the two families. Mbappe's father, Benzema's father, all of that I think is very, very similar.
The historic relationship between your country and Germany, I mean, there's like a nightmare period of French football history where all of your great teams run into, it turned out not to be that great German teams, and not as good as your French teams anyway, it seems, and that's how it feels from a historic perspective. Has this team got any of that baggage? Do they feel anything when they're facing the mighty German side as a result of the French history, or have they managed to expunge all of that from the record books?
No, I think this team has 2016 semi-final of the Euros at Marseille at the Velodrome, 2-0 win against Germany. That's all they have. I mean, Giroud's first international goal is in Germany. It's a friendly, but they go there and won against Germany in Bremen. I remember being there. And it feels, and maybe I might be wrong, and tonight Germany beat France, and then we play them again in the final, for example, which is possible, and then they beat us again. But it feels that it shifted a little bit from, there was a time, you're right, especially the two games in the 80s, 82 and 86, 82 in Seville, certainly the one where France, we still feel to this day now, 25 years later, or whatever it is, that we should have won that game, and the Schumacher on Battiston, and Schumacher should have been sent off, and then we had control of this game that we obviously end up losing. 86 is a bit different. I think we're very tired from the games that we've played. Platini is a bit injured as well, and then they're a very efficient, clinical team in 86, and in that semi-final as well. But certainly 82, yeah, it's a big scar. And then we've had all those games against German clubs, the Saint-Etienne Bayern Munich final of the European Cup in 76 in Scotland, even recently to the PSG Bayern one in Lisbon in 2020. So there's a long history between them and us. But it feels lately, I don't know why, maybe I'm wrong, but they're going through quite a long transition, to be fair, where we are so strong. And I really believe there's 2016 and that win in the semi-final, even if we didn't win the final then after, but that win in the semi-final shifted a little bit the dynamic, I feel, between the two countries of like, okay, we are going this way, the way up, where they're very much going the way down. And 2018 showed it, and that fiasco at the World Cup. And ever since, he hasn't been great. So they might have a really good tournament. And I do think this is a much better German team than what people make out to be. However, I still feel there was that shift happening and that we are a stronger, more confident, with more momentum team right now than them. And that's why we should be slightly favourite going into the game tonight.
We know that Jogi Löw is finishing up at the end of this tournament. There has been some speculation around Didier Deschamps, but it seems odd to me, given how close the next World Cup is, that you would leave now with such a gifted array of players who are in a sweet spot of success. What's your instinct? Is Deschamps here until the end of the next World Cup?
So his contract finishes on December 31st, 2022. So if he wants to, the contract is there for after that World Cup. And then the Federation, I think, would like already to extend him until 2024. And that, I think that would definitely be the end, that Euros in 2024. Even if he wins this tournament and become the first guy ever to win both World Cup and Euros back-to-back as player and manager, which, if you think about it, already winning it as a player and a manager, and there are only 3 who've done the World Cup as player and manager, it's already sensational. But if you win back-to-back World Cup Euros as a player and 20 years on as a manager, this is like, I'm not even sure this would be done again. So you could see why he could leave at the top of the top of any pinnacle in the whole entire planet. But you know what? He's such a winner that I think he sees this. And don't forget all the ones who haven't made this squad. You know, the likes and the ones who are between, let's say, 18 and 22. All that generation coming through, and the likes of Upamecano and Konate and Camavinga and Aouar, basically all the under-21 team that should have won that Euros instead of Germany, but because we have such a useless manager at that age group, we crashed out in the way we did in the quarterfinals. But that under-21 squad is sensational. And Deschamps, trust me, he's not stupid. He can see and say, okay, if I get half of that team in the next 3 years, let's say, to go into 2024, we can easily win again. I mean, it's not that simple, but certainly have a squad to be able to win Euros, World Cup Euros again. So I think he's that intelligent that if, let's say, there was a bit of a dip in talent for the next generation, you would think, that's going to be tricky to keep winning with that bunch of players. Let's go out on the top. Now he sees that maybe the next one is certainly as good as this one, potentially. Is going to go, you know what, I'm not giving my space to Zinedine Zidane or anyone else. I'm going to try to keep winning with all that talent is coming through as well.
Yeah, and not to mention he's got Kylian Mbappe, who might well be the greatest footballer of all time. Like, we don't know.
Exactly, and he's only 22.
Yeah.
If Mbappe was 30, Deschamps could think, I'm not so sure. But Mbappe is nowhere near the best that he will become in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years' time. So if you're Deschamps, you think, he can take me to winning far more trophies almost on his own than if I hadn't him. So yeah, you're right. Mbappe is also a big factor for why Deschamps would certainly be looking at staying for as long as he can.
Julien, merci beaucoup. Bon chance ce soir.
Thank you, guys. No problem. Speak anytime.
Julien Laurens there. Brilliant stuff about the French squad. It turns out it was a stroke of genius to bring him back.
Before that conversation, I was wondering what round will France get knocked out at?
Now I'm thinking like 3-0, routine 3-0 wins in every game.
And they will win the tournament after that, and the tournament after that, and the tournament after that.
I am pumped about this French team tonight, and I want to see them thrash Germany now all of a sudden. That was brilliant. That was Julien Laurens from BT Sport and obviously ESPN covering French football. OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Tomorrow morning, on OTB AM, we're talking with Orla Duff and Una White, 2 Gaelic footballers who designed the first GAA gloves for women. We're talking France-Germany with Jean-Philippe Leclerc and much more as well, besides live as always from 7:30 AM. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. The Euro Show on OTB coming up across all of our channels at 11 o'clock today on OTB Sports Radio as well. Right now we're bringing you some more rugby with Keith Wood.
Yeah, very happy to say Keith Wood with us. Hi, Keith.
Hey Joe, how are you doing?
Very well. So a few things going on. Ireland squad named today. This is for the Japan game. Japan game being on the 3rd of July, 1 o'clock Saturday. And the USA game also at the Aviva Stadium. That's a week later on July 10th, which will be 7:15. There will be fans at the Aviva Stadium. This will be as part of one of these pilot events, which is good. So... big enough squad named by Andy Farrell. The headline news as such, Johnny Sexton is fit. Actually, that was the interesting thing from the press conference. Johnny Sexton is fit again, but he's been excused. He's given some rest. Keith Earls the same and Cian Healy the same. So Sexton, Earls, Cian Healy rested. 11 uncapped players come in, and I suppose what caught the eye was that the out-halves are Joey Carberry, Billy Burns and Harry Byrne. So no place for Ross Byrne, for instance. And that caught the eye, I suppose. James Ryan, captain of the squad. Hard to know what you read into all of this, I suppose. These are fairly low-key matches, not even a tour this time around.
Yeah, I think they're low-key, but I also think it's an opportunity to have a look at as many players as possible. There's 37 guys in that squad for 2 matches, which is huge. I think it'll give an opportunity for Farrell to see how lots of new players into the squad can perform at training, how they turn up, what their attitude is like, what their ceiling might be. You get a better idea when you see them in the flesh and how they react to the players around them. So that's a good part of it. I'm delighted to see the players that have been rested because I don't think we get any benefit from them playing in these matches. And I don't know, I still think the game has changed significantly enough that you need to manage what you have and you need to manage the resources that you're at your beck and call. Why would you play Johnny Sexton or Keith Earls against Japan or USA? And that sounds incredibly disrespectful, but I'm saying if no matter what matches we're on, at this time of the year, why would you play them? So you're going to have them for big matches or you're not going to have them at all. And these are guys that have a lot of miles on the clock and you like a little bit more out of them where you can. So I think if it's safe to say that Johnny Sexton is his time is going to be limited in a green jersey, in any jersey, I think, going forward. So we want him for big games where possible, and we want other guys to take over from him, because he will not play forever. And in that regard, I think it's interesting picking Harry Byrne. Everybody that has played with him and have seen him up close have said that he has a very high ceiling. Well, I think these are great matches to be able to see whether he can break through those.
Yeah. He said of the out-half situation, Andy Farrell, that is, as far as Ross Byrne's concerned, I suppose he's in the same boat as Jack Carty or Luke McGrath or Kieran Marmion. Those guys have been in, they've done great jobs for us in the past, and they'll take a rest, albeit on standby, to come back in. I mean, that's a polite way of putting it, I suppose. If I was Ross Byrne, unfortunately, I'd be sitting there with my arms crossed thinking, I know what this means, and it's not good.
You'd be trying not to dig your brother, is what you'd be doing if you were Ross Byrne. But... yeah, I think it's a recognition that he can. I think he took a couple of steps forwards and a couple of steps back this year. I think there was a couple of matches where he played on the line. He looked an awful lot more imposing, and then in a couple of the pressurised games, he went back into a shell a little. He can't really play for Ireland if he's playing in a shell. So. That's the change he's going to have to make, that he becomes infinitely more assertive. He's going to get smashed in doing so, but that's the nature of playing 10. And that's what he's going to have to go and do. He's the best kicker that we have. He's one of the best kickers in the world off the tee. He is so consistent. It's so easy, effortless for him. He needs to bring that level of confidence and consistency into controlling a game more. And that's harder when the pressure is harder. So he has to learn that very, very quickly. And that's a tough thing for him. And his brother gets a chance to do it. And he doesn't get a chance because he's sitting in the wings. So it's tough. It's not easy. And, to play out half, you're almost exposed constantly, and you get all the plaudits. You know, it's all the joy is there, the winning of matches is there, but also the failures are there too. It's a very, very hard place to play.
Yeah, for sure. It's such an area of focus. Like, there's 11 uncapped players in this squad. We went straight to Harry Byrne. We talked about Harry Byrne. Everybody will be looking out to see what Harry Byrne does. But a last one on him, we're talking about his ceiling being higher and maybe him being the player who, well, I guess along now with Joey Carbery, it's great to see him back and fit again, so he's in the mix. But maybe the real successor to Sexton, Harry Byrne or Joey Carbery. So from Harry Byrne's perspective, this period in with the squad, this is a chance for him to really make an impression. I would presume you said off the field stuff is important as well. How he carries himself, how he goes in training, and really to try and cement a spot going forward next squad, even if it's a little bit ahead of schedule with regard to how much he's played for Leinster.
It's funny, when you get young guys coming into a squad, you want them to be confident but not too cocky. You know, you want them to be engaging but not everything being a laugh and a joke. You want them to understand the pressure and to try and wear it lightly. No, you kind of want that for all players, mind you. That's a very steep learning curve for young guys, especially when you're coming into the sort of quarterback role at 10. So, look, for me, I think what you're looking for a young 10 is that he's vocal, is that he knows his game and is confident in his game, that he demands things of the players around him. And look, I'd go back to the earliest time of playing with Rog when he was a young fella, and you're telling him as a senior guy, you're saying, if you tell me to get out of the way, I'm going to get out of the way. And if you tell me where to go, I'm going to go there, because you're the eyes on the game. You're the guy who pulls the strings on the game. So you have to get to that place fairly quickly. And because the difference between now and when Rod started is you're given time then. And you're not given time anymore. It's become very blame-oriented, much more so, I think, than it was 25 years ago or whenever, when Rod was starting, that it was more accepting of mistakes then. We'd all have been upset, but you'd say he's a young fella, look, he'll get good over time.
Yeah.
And you can see the quality he has. Now it's become, well, we're used to success and everybody has to be successful immediately. It's much tougher now.
Of the other uncapped players, I wonder who you're looking forward to seeing, or maybe who do you think here could establish themselves as a player going forward? We have Balakoon. I think everybody's a bit excited about his pace. Tom O'Toole, Nick Tominey of Ulster, Caelan Blade, Tom Daly, Paul Boyle of Connacht, Peter Dooley and Ross Maloney of Leinster, and then Gavin Coombs, who scored 4 tries at the weekend, and Finian Wycherley of Munster. They're the uncapped cohort going forward. Which of those might we be talking about in maybe 4, 5, 6 years as having a few caps under their belt?
I think Robert Balakoon, definitely. I think he has shown he's got a bit of size, a bit of pace, he's a bit of confidence. There's a spark about him, so I like him a lot. I want to see him play. I can't wait to see him play, actually, in an Irish jersey. I think Coombs is the standout player for Munster this season for a young guy. The amount of tries he scored, the power he has under pressure. I think he'll find it tough next year because he will be targeted next year, because he will be one of the main guys, and CJ carried a huge amount for Munster for so many years. He won't be carrying it. I would hope that we don't have Coombs doing the short, heavy carries. I want him doing the ones where he can power over people and do them at pace, because he is class. And I think Blade is quite interesting too. I mean, there's a lot of fighting around 9. I think there's people who have been almost ordained as successors, but I think that's more open. And I think there should be a good old battle there too.
Okay, interesting. By the way, just to mark everyone's card, don't be surprised if you see Andy Farrell in South Africa in July. So he said of the line situation, and again, the second match is July 10th, and obviously the first Lions test is the 24th of July, so there's a 2-week gap there. He said, I've spoken to Warren a couple of times and I'm more than happy, obviously, to help out. Where it stands at the moment is that Warren has left a spot open and he wants to see how the workload goes in the first week or so of the camps. If he needs any help around any of that, I'm happy to help out. So that sounds like there's a distinct chance Andy Farrell will head out, doesn't it?
I do, and I think that's great for all concerned. I think as a coach, you get better in those high pressured circumstances. You learn an awful lot about yourself and about other players. I think it's brilliant. I'd have been very upset if he went. and wasn't here for the Irish team. Because he's only just in his first year, and I think that's a big deal, really. For the most part, like I'd say, a year and a bit, but it really is only 1 year because of COVID and all the delays have all been kind of squashed in. But and I think we need to be building an awful lot. So if he'd been out on the Lions tour and hadn't been there for the Japan and USA game, I'd be upset. Yeah. But I think we get every part right if he goes after the fact.
Speaking of Harry Byrne and the others getting in and having a chance to impress management, Ronan Kelleher, the news came through over the weekend. He is now training with the Lions over in Jersey at the moment as cover. So Jamie George and Luke Cowan-Dickey are involved with Saracens and Exeter respectively. So only Ken Owens there at the moment for training. So they put the call in to Ronan Kelleher and he's gone or going over, certainly. I mean, it shows a few things. One, he's next man in, so that'll be a real filler for him. An injury very easily happens and I'm next man in. And I would think he will, I presume, view this as a real opportunity to make some kind of marker here. Like, your advice to him would not be to go over there and just go through the motions and don't upset anyone kind of thing. You want to get stuck in and show him what you're about.
Oh, I'd upset everyone. He needs to go, get on the plane, get over there, which he is, and say, I'm a Lion until told otherwise. And I mean, how great it is that he gets to see Ken Owens up close. I think he's played against him, but he gets to see him, how he trains, how he acts, the Lions is such an unbelievable experience for young guys. They just learn an awful lot from the players around them. But for him, I would say, yeah, I'm good enough to be here. I have to prove to Warren he should have picked me in the first place. And if there's a hint of an injury, not only will I go, but I can offer something very serious. So, Look, I think he is a guy. Look, we've noticed him for quite a while. He's had a couple of issues with his lineouts, haven't we all? I think when you play in that position, he'll get over those very quickly. I would imagine he'll learn an awful lot in the time that he's there now, over throwing under pressure. It's a different. It's all for training. It's the biggest learning experience you can have. So, if I was him, I'd be thinking I'm a Lion. And the only downside is that he's sent home at the end of it. It's a little bit vulnerable with his tail between his legs, just a little. But I would be opening up his heart to being a Lion and see how that would actually function for him. Yeah, and sent home because that's the plan anyway. So, I mean, tail between his legs, even not massively. Yeah. No. And so the other point to make is, and you'd kind of whisper it in his ear, it's not like this is some UEFA competition or World Rugby competition. There's no limit on the squad. Like, if you do really well, Gatlin might just say, well, look, you're in the bubble, you're COVID-free, you know all our calls, sure, come anyway. And sure, we have a 38-man squad or whatever it is. That's the other possibility, even if there's not an injury. What's the kind of gap with him and Owens, George and Cowan-Dickey? Where is he in that reckoning, do you think? How far off, if at all? I think he is off because of experience and the amount of big games he's played. That's where he's off. Okay. And it's how does he react under pressure. So there's an element of risk in bringing him. So on older tours, I actually believe he would have been brought because you can grow in a longer period of time. You can get used to the pressure. Actually being in that bubble of quality just brings you to a higher level anyway. And I think he would have had a much better chance. On this one, I think it's much harder. So there's a risk element for Warren Gatland in picking him because he mightn't be able to take the pressure and it might be too much for him. Now, it could be that for everybody, but for younger guys who haven't played a huge amount, that's where the element of risk. So to not take the risk is understandable. But I think if it had been a full and normal tour, I think he would have been in with a very good shout of going there. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he offers a huge amount. I think he's maybe 2 or 3 years away from his best rugby. And that's an interesting place to get to. Can he accelerate that and keep it there for a longer period of time? So I don't think he's far away at all. And I think if you have an injury and you bring him out there, the risk is already gone, because somebody else has got injured and these are the decisions you have to make. But he offers something different. He's a very, very good ball carrier, very powerful. He just needs to tidy up some of the technical parts of the game. Okay, well, maybe.
hopefully he's a bolter in the real true sense of the word and goes out there under the radar and maybe has a tour, who knows. So you wish him well. He's hooked up with the Lions, still not officially part of the party, as we've said, but he's there as cover in the short term. On the weekend's action, I mean, there's not a huge amount to say, I suppose, about this competition that hasn't been said already. Leinster had fans at the RDS, which was a positive against Dragons, and Munster were in Parma against Zebre. Gavin Coombs, we mentioned, scored 4 tries. I haven't really talked to you the last couple of weeks. Leinster we've talked about at length. Munster's season then, so the endpoints are the very disappointing Pro 14 final against Leinster at the RDS, and then I know you were at the game for us in the Heineken Champions Cup where Toulouse knocked them out. Toulouse eventual winners, you can kind of say, well look, beaten by the eventual winners, you can kind of rationalise that as being okay in your own mind over the summer. How do you assess then the Munster season? Has this just been another season of lots of 2 steps forward, 1 step back? That's the consensus I seem to get from most of our pundits.
Yeah, look, I think Munster have improved in different places. I think other teams have improved as well, and I think it's maybe the wrong route is to try and match size with size. And I look back on that Toulouse game, and Munster were somehow in the game for a lot of it. They played with incredible heart for 70, 75 minutes. You'd live that dream and think that dream was possible, and you wonder if there was a crowd in there, whether it might have nudged them over the line to do it. And yet at the end, it seemed as if they were comprehensively beaten. And yet I thought Munster had a lot of opportunities, and their decision-making at time as to whether to pass or not to pass, or the quality of that passing, I think at times, and some of the decision-making let them down. So I think if Munster are going to think that they'll compete with the French teams by having huge forwards and be heavy hitting for everything, I don't think that that's the route for Munster or Leinster or Ulster, Connacht. I don't know that that's in our makeup, and I don't know if it can equally be in our financial makeup that we have to buy that in. I think that makes it very difficult. I think they suffered from a few injuries, and when you've big name signings, you want them to play, and we got 7 minutes out of Snyman this year, so that's a bit unfortunate. But I actually think they've played pretty well. But on the big days, I feel as if their performances haven't been at the standard that we would like and wish. So the Leinster game for me, in the final, I just didn't feel that Munster raised a gallop.
Well, that one was very dispiriting. They're probably lucky that wasn't their season sign-off, or there'd be a real sense of woe is us about the summer. And one last one on Munster then. Those failings on the big days and maybe relying on big forward power at times, I would have said maybe you could have thrown that at Munster, that accusation, over the last couple of years, really. That's kind of where they've been for a while now, no?
I think Munster are a better team now. I think there's a better balance to it. I think the reliance on and the huge excitement on Joey Carberry coming back, but the reliance on a guy who hadn't played for nearly 2 years, that he would be the magic key to do it. I think it becomes a big season for him next season. But he needs to have an amount of time without being injured, an amount of time with a level of confidence, and maybe a game plan that isn't as kick oriented as Munster's has been. I'm frustrated with the pick and go, and I'm frustrated with kicking away the ball. And I think Munster need to hold on to the ball for longer periods of time.
I take your point on Kirby. Big season for him for sure, and RG Sneeman back, and there's a few positives there. I'd put it to you, it feels like a big season for the coaching ticket. This is the first time where I've been reading pieces towards the end of this season, really asking serious questions of Van Graan. So he'll be feeling that bit of heat, I think, next year, fair or otherwise.
Fair, I would say. I think it's appropriate that you'd have the pressure on the coaches, because we would say that some of the play, it was late in changing. It started changing when there was almost like an air of freedom around making that change, and it required maybe a couple of guys being injured. It required a truncated season. It required playing fully loaded international teams against other teams that you might attack a little bit more. So at different times in the season, Munster played some fantastic rugby. But it isn't that. It's playing under that level of pressure and trying to have both of those styles of play. I think those elements are interesting. But I think there's huge pressure because the expectation is that Munster can play at the top table. I have to say, getting to a final of your competition is the top table. I have to say, playing against and losing against the overall winners is pretty much at the top table. But that isn't good enough, and you know it isn't, because everybody wants their team to win. So I do think the standard of performance has to up. I do think the variation has to up, and so that, of course, that puts pressure on the coaches. But that's their job. That's what they have to try and deliver on.
It sure is. So a couple of weeks back, I think you caught some of the piece, but for anybody who didn't, we had Tom English on the show. Tom English is with BBC Scotland, but he's written a new book called This Is Your Everest, The Lions, the Springboks and the Epic Tour of 1997. I must say, and I said it to Tom, I had thought that this tour had been well excavated. I didn't need to know a whole lot more about the tour. But actually, it was a brilliant chat with him, and the book has loads of stuff in it that I just did not realise, not least about the South African perspective. So something I wanted to ask you about is that the years 95 to 97, when we think of South African rugby over here, I mean, in our heads, not a whole lot went on. They won the World Cup, then the Lions Tour was 2 years later. It turns out, and I'm sure you were aware of this at the time, but it turns out all hell was breaking loose in a number of ways. Some of it, just very unfortunate. They lost their coach, Kitch Christie. Ultimately, he passed away with leukemia in 98, so he had to leave the setup, and they basically hadn't lost a game under Christie. So that was a massive, massive issue. Politically, things weren't good. Fans started waving the apartheid flag again, and members of cabinet were saying they didn't support the team anymore. And Andrew Marcraft, one of their coaches, had to resign in disgrace for things he was saying, racial slurs, very, very messy. Eoin Ackerman test positive for steroids in May of 97. And there are pay disputes as well, as in the younger players are getting far less money than the World Cup winners, and that's not a great dynamic in a team. All of this stuff, and more, by the way, is bubbling along. And then the chief issue, if you listen to the players, and that's where I'm going to with this, is that their 37-year-old coach, Carl du Plessis, who by all accounts was an outstanding player in the 80s, he was ill-equipped for that job, and they were unanimous that he was really not up to scratch. They all say, like, a lovely man, but really not at the races and just nowhere near the standard required at 37 years of age to coach them. And so the point I wanted to put to you is that everybody from, there's James Dalton, Teichmann says it as well. There's quite a few players who all say, basically, we gifted that tour to that Lions squad. A few of them say they didn't really rate the Lions squad. Basically, if we hadn't been in complete disarray, like at our absolute worst, we would have won that series, and we should have won that series, and that's very much how we feel about it. That was the overwhelming response from the players. So a few questions. Did you know that's how they felt? Were they open about that, do you remember, at the time, or has that seeped out more recently?
Well, they weren't particularly... there wasn't a huge amount of interaction with them during the tour, apart from, I'm going to say, apart from beating them. There was definitely conversations afterwards, and I had it with a few of the players afterwards. We would have looked at that team. We knew there was disarray within them.
Right.
But I can tell you there's an element of after the fact in terms of that, because they were so confident they were going to beat us. I mean, if you're looking at back then, I think I haven't seen the book yet, but I had spoken to Tom English on it, and he got all excited about some of the South African sides of it, and he gets very excited about it anyway. And it's funny for a guy to be as in love with the topic that he was writing about, which he really is. And but we didn't care about anything like that. It was quite interesting. Our job was to go out and try and win a test series. And everything about that was that they were going to wipe the floor with us. So I don't know that that was bravado on their side, but that was the expectation that they had. But you couldn't step away from the fact that they couldn't kick snow off a rope. Their goal kicking stats on that was just appalling, and those 3 tests were just unbelievable. Well, the 2 tests that we won they were rubbish. They kept picking players out of position.
Yeah.
And we were we were laughing at not laughing at it because there's no fun in scrummaging, I tell you, against beasts of men like they are. But they thought they were going to kill us in the first test. And their expectation afterwards was when they didn't kill us in the pack in the first test, they would absolutely kill us in the second test. And I don't know that there's any change of an attitude. They felt that actually if they could go and overwhelm us physically, that's how they would win. But our discipline was pretty incredible for the 2 tests. Our accuracy and technical prowess, Paul Wallace's pretty outstanding locking of the scrum, meant that we kept using their weight against them. Now, with all the best will in the world, there could have been disarray behind them, and I'm sure that there was. But their game plan was to grind us down and kick the points. They didn't pick a kicker. They picked players out of position, and they couldn't grind us down. So for me, I don't care what they think in terms of that. I think that they still were in an opportunity to do it. Would we have done something else if we had to? If they were kicking the kicks over, I think we would have played differently. The manner in which we played for the matches that weren't the tests, there was tries everywhere. We played a far more open style. But when we got to the tests, we dealt with what was in front of us. So, I'm not offended by what they think of us. It doesn't bother me what they thought of us. The only thing that we were there to try and do was to actually get a win.
Yeah, I didn't suspect you would be that bothered. I mean, it's not the most magnanimous thing of them to say, but I didn't suspect you'd be losing sleep either.
No, it isn't. But it is one of the things that I would still hold to South African rugby. So I was at the World Cup final in Tokyo, and the manner in which they won and played, I loved. They played with heavy hitting forwards, but they also played with magic in their back line. With 2 of the smallest guys playing in the World Cup in Faf de Klerk and Cheslin Colby. They were outstanding. It was a great joy of mixing power with elusiveness and skills. And so that was fantastic. But still, the core belief of South African rugby is that you have to intimidate them in the forwards, which they did do in the final. But the way to try and beat them, which is what's going to be interesting for the Lions going down there, is you have to meet that challenge. But I don't think you want to play exactly in the manner in which they're playing.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.